American Sunrise Early Edition, President Trump and the Pentagon get serious about making sure the violence in the streets of LA comes to an end. Over the objections of California Governor Gavin Newsom, they're sending in Mother Green and her fighting machine, as in 700 active duty Marines, to join the National Guard and restore order against illegal alien invaders who are attacking ICE and the cops. Now, as Gavin Newsom's stock continues to fall in the Democratic Party presidential sweepstakes, does that mean people like Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker's stock is rising? Don't bet on it. He's a big sanctuary state leader, too, and he's about to be exposed in a congressional hearing. Speaking of governors, it's primary day in the big off-year governor's election in New Jersey. The Democrats running have all been trying to cast themselves as more anti-Trump than the rest. But is that the way to go in a state that almost went to Trump last November? On the media front, Warner Brothers announces the split everyone was expecting, making one company for its streaming networks and movie studios and another for its cable channels. But many see it as a way for Warner's to finally dump the money-losing and embarrassing CNN. And environmentalist turned pro-Hamas supporter Greta Thunberg and her selfie flotilla arrive in Israel, where they attempt to support terrorists. It's going about as well as her attempts to stop you from driving to Chipotle. She's a loser on all counts, folks. American Sunrise Early Edition begins now.
Welcome to American Sunrise Early Edition. The show where faith, freedom, and the values that built this nation take center stage.
Your good deeds and bad deeds. That's how we're going to judge you.
Join host Jake Novak as he breaks down the stories that matter.
We will be letting the public know regularly what we have found.
American Sunrise Early Edition with your host, Jake Novak, starts now.
Hi, I'm Jake Novak. Welcome to American Sunrise Early Edition. This is a Tuesday. Remember, Jerry Seinfeld said on the Seinfeld show, Tuesday has no feel to it. But this Tuesday has a feel to it. It's a primary day, and we also have so much news going on across the country. A little bit less of a violent night in Los Angeles last night. Gee, I wonder why. We'll talk about that. Joining us now is Republican strategist Vanessa Simon. That's a tough one. I've got my tongue all twisted today. Vanessa, I want to get your take on the political ramifications, because I feel like it's appropriate to talk about this morning. It was a little bit of a quieter night in Los Angeles last night, only scattered incidents. I think that's because the National Guard is there. Also, the announcement that the Marines are coming. So, again, we're not talking about terrible mayhem that I have to update every little detail about every 5 seconds. So you see this video from the last few days. It's definitely very serious. But let's talk about the politics of this, Vanessa, because there are some people who say this is like a campaign ad for President Trump, even though he's not running again. It's certainly the Republicans in 2026. And there are other people who say, yeah, that makes sense now. But if people have a general feeling of not feeling comfortable in this country, that things are falling apart, sometimes that's bad for the party in power. So how do you see this playing out as far as who's going to get helped and who's going to get hurt politically over this stuff?
Here's the thing. I'm going to be direct here. I mean, there's not one American family that's looking at the situation play out on TV in front of their children and families and able to speak to it in a way that is like from a humanitarian lens, right? Like, we understand the ICE piece. Like, we understand that illegal immigrants absolutely should not be in our country. This is America. However, for every action, there's an equal reaction, right? So yes, this happening and how it sparked in graduations, things like that, that's a rough thing. It's not something that was comfortable and well received. And then now the city explodes. City like LA, cities like New York, we need law and order. So it's one of those things where, yes, it seems drastic to many, where it's like, oh God, the armed guards are being sent. But it's like in large cities like this, a small spark can turn into a huge forest fire. And whether it's looting, rioting, and just the safety of both like civilians and our government, like law enforcement, it can get ugly quickly. So it's one of those things where it's not a political campaign. I actually get frustrated by the left and the Democrats Democrats, any chance that they could have Trump's name in their mouth, like toothpaste, like they're going to say Trump's name. Instead of coming at this with a logical and truly pragmatic solution, it's like, hey guys, let's take a step back. Like this absolutely should have been addressed, but the way that we went about it could have been done a little bit better. And as usual, Newsom's on the defense. He's on the ropes of the boxing ring playing victim. So it's difficult for us to see as Americans. That's where I'll leave it.
Yeah, I think, and I get your point, and I think most of us watching this, most normal Americans don't look at violence like this and automatically think, gee, how am I going to vote over this? They don't think that. But they are, I believe, really, really wanting to see some leader at some level of government say that they have a plan to get this thing under control without blaming somebody else and without talking about it. And you can love or hate President Trump, especially in some of these blue cities, but he's doing stuff. The idea that people like Gavin Newsom think they're going to score political points by saying, oh, Trump's trying to do something. He's bringing law and order here. That's terrible. He's actually, is he even listening to himself? I mean, honestly, that's what a lot of people are going to want when they see this kind of mayhem, especially Vanessa, if you live in some of these areas where the mayhem is going on, or you have a business there, or you're not well educated enough to know that the way that you stop things from escalating in a violent situation, whether it's a real war or urban terrorism like this, is to show overwhelming force. That's why you send an army of thousands of people, even if it's only a few dozen doing stuff. That's how you do it. I want to get back over to the East Coast because you talked about New York City there just for a moment. And I'm very concerned about stuff over here in New York. You have basically a communist Democrat. His name is Zoran Mamdani. He's closing in on Andrew Cuomo in the Democratic primary polls. And remember, because New York does this whole ranked choice voting thing, even if he comes in a close second, they'll keep playing this game into overtime and overtime and overtime. It's like a shootout in hockey until they get a winner. And Zoran Mamdani could be a winner. Now, this is maybe good news for Republicans nationwide as people see the real face of the Democratic Party right now. Someone who can't get himself to say he supports the existence of the state of Israel. Someone who says basically all those negative things about Trump, also as if Trump really affects New York City so much anymore. He doesn't. He's not running for office again. I'm concerned about this. How about you, Vanessa?
I'm very concerned, Jake. We're 2 weeks today from our primary, June 24th, here in New York City. New York City, my New Yorkers, if you're not tuned in, now is the time to tune in. We have the Democratic primary on June 24th, Mamdani being that close to Cuomo. But to be honest, Jake, why is this? It's like the worst of it's the pick of the litter here, and all the options are like terrible. So I'll give that to New Yorkers. It's like we don't really have the best options, but it's sad to say Cuomo is the best option against Mamdani. And this is someone with like blood on their hands, literally, with like all the, COVID and unfortunately the lives that were lost in COVID. But it's just like Mamdani, he seems shiny and he seems like the cool new thing. But if you actually peel back the layers to his policies and what he wants to do, he will bankrupt the city and it will need law and order. And it's one of those things where it'll be absolute mayhem. I'm not being an alarmist. It's one of those things where his social media game is strong. He comes off likable. He comes off personable. But when you actually peel back the layers to his policies, we will be in huge trouble. And I must add the point that should he not come in first place in the primary, he will guarantee and secure the working families party line, which keeps him on the ballot. So New Yorkers, please lean in. After the primary, we really have to take a look at every candidate on the ballot and see who will get us to some kind of restoration and some common sense here in New York.
Yeah, I mean, also, you've had a devaluation of the mayor's office in New York. I always felt that in terms of attention, media attention, and potential influence, being mayor of New York City was second only to being president of the United States until people like Bill de Blasio and now Eric Adams really devalued the office. I think even the most liberal New Yorker can look at those guys and realize these people aren't really serious people. They're not people who really have a message for the city or the country. They really cheapened the office of mayor of New York City, which at one time, really not that long ago, was a very prominent position. Now we're going to stay on the East Coast because today is primary day. There's been early voting, but today is the last day. Today is primary day in the New Jersey governor's race. Now on the Republican side, Jack Ciattarelli, who almost won, he only lost by a few points 4 years ago in the governor's race. He's running again. He's got, it looks like, pretty much the Republican nomination wrapped up. But there is a very crowded field of Democrats. But Vanessa, each and every one of those Democrats seems to think that presenting themselves as the most anti-Trump candidate is the way to win, even though President Trump only lost the Garden State by 5 percentage points last November. And like I said, they're not just saying they're anti-Trump. They're going even further. Vanessa, they even have one candidate, Josh Gottheimer, who, by the way, isn't going to win today. He's not doing that great in the polls. But he did have the ad of him boxing President Trump, like in a boxing match. They used AI and some other stuff to make it look like he's in a boxing match. I think we have some video up there, as if this is like going to be his job, to punch Donald Trump in the face. There's the ad going right now. This is pathetic. Here, again, memo to the Democrats. Donald Trump's not running again. Memo to the Democrats of New Jersey. Donald Trump almost won your state just a few months ago. And final memo to the Democrats. What is it exactly that you're protecting your state from when it comes to Donald Trump? Deporting illegal aliens who are absolutely sucking out the money from your taxpayer base, deporting illegal aliens who are committing crimes, and on down the line. Are those the things that you really want to protect New Jersey from? I just don't understand this line of campaigning, Vanessa.
I don't either, Jake. I'm exhausted by this strategy from the left that they cannot run a campaign without having some kind of anti-Trump rhetoric as part of their base and what they're sharing. It's like, is anyone coming to the table with something that will actually provide some solutions for their cities, their states, just constituents, anybody? It's actually disheartening to feel that in this day and age, the Democrats, their main point, their only strategy is to come forward and say some anti-Trump stuff. The fact that this ad of him showing him knocking out President Trump just for views and likes, I want a leader that is here to lead, not here to try to get as many likes as possible, trying to do something that includes or incorporates President Trump's name in it. So that's where we're at in this country. And if that's the only way forward for a lot of Democrats, they are going to continue to lose and not gain significant ground here in this country.
Yeah. And again, learn your lesson from Mr. Gottheimer. He's not going to win the primary today. I think he's in third place in the polls. He's not going to get there. But boy, are they spending a lot of money. I mean, when I go to the gym after this program, they've got all the local news stations up on all the TV screens at my gym. And it's one ad after the other for either the New Jersey governor's race or for the New York mayor's race. That's a lot of money. This is the number one market in America for advertising. They're spending millions and millions of dollars on probably some 25-year-old who said, let's show a picture of you boxing President Trump. And these are people who just don't know how to read tea leaves and don't know how to read really where the people are going. Vanessa Simon, I want to thank you so much for joining us. It's Tuesday, but I want you to have a great rest of your week. I really appreciate your coming on.
Jake, everyone have a great day. Enjoy.
You too. All right. Coming up, Washington, D.C. decided to forget about enforcing its truancy laws. And you could probably guess what happened next. And no, it wasn't just a surge in its absenteeism.
You're all right, officer. Hey, a little something for the kids. Okay, take that. It's okay, huh?
I don't have any kids.
No, kids, we're here. Get yourself some kids. We're here. Take it all right? And just remember, the best thing about kids is making them.
That was the late, great Rodney Dangerfield doing some advanced work to promote President Trump's new Cash for Newborns plan that the White House unveiled yesterday. Go get yourself some kids and meet me back here when American Sunrise Early Edition comes right back. It's a live look at Times Square in New York City. Welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. I polled the control room. A lot of young people in the control room. None of them have seen that movie that I had the clip from. None of them have seen Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield. I'm sure many of you watching will agree with me that is a must-watch film, especially for young people. It still holds up. That movie is almost 30 years old. Sorry to make everyone feel old. Sorry, 40 years old. It's almost 40 years old. It came out in the summer of 1986. But it is still funny. It holds up. Washington, D.C., speaking of young people, Washington, D.C. is still a growing city because the government never stops growing, as you know. But its public schools are still nowhere near being rated as very good. They're still a very weak public school system in that city. There's no denying it. In fact, all those top government officials and lobbyists who live in D.C. send their kids to private schools in town. That's what we know. Now, that situation got even worse for the public schools because, again, all the rich kids and kids who have parents who would really push them to do well don't even go to the public schools. But anyway, that situation got even worse in recent years as the D.C. public school system decided to relax its anti-truancy program. The result, even the liberal Washington Post came out with a front-page story yesterday explaining that not busting teens for skipping school led to the biggest teen crime spree in D.C. history. To be specific, the district's child welfare agency has largely abandoned, basically stopped, the early warning system that city leaders set up more than a decade ago to find absent students and help them return to the classroom. More than 18,000 reports of truancy went uninvestigated in the last 3 full school years. According to the Post, city leaders blame the coronavirus, of course, for the uptick in unexpected absences, as well as the rise in youth crime. I mean, honestly. But this all started before that. It was before Corona, before COVID. The truancy rate began rising for D.C. middle schoolers in 2014, when more than 30% of the students didn't show up. It's now 33% on a regular day. Folks, first of all, this is a huge problem for the kids themselves. It's not like the teens go out and attack older people, although some of them do. They're attacking each other. And second of all, if you have a kid who's not coming to school 40, 50 days out of the year, you can bet they might be getting abused at home. That's why you have to report truancy. It's not just about getting the kid in trouble. It's about making sure the kid isn't in trouble. Just incredible what's going on in Washington, D.C. The fact that we just don't seem to care about our kids. But Donald Trump's the mean one. He's the bad guy. All right. If you still have to believe, though, that children are our future, and President Trump sure does, he announced the details of his $1,000 per American newborn child account right here. Watch.
Here's how the accounts work. For every U.S. citizen born after December 31st, 2024, before January 1st, 2029, the federal government will make a one-time contribution of $1,000 into a tax-deferred account that will track the overall stock market. In other words, it'll be pegged to an index that we'll pick. Right, Michael? We'll pick it. We'll pick a good one. Maybe you should be the index. I'd like to have that. These kids would be very wealthy if that were the case. That would be a good idea. I think we might do that, Michael Dell. These accounts will be private property controlled by the child's guardians, and in many cases, those guardians will be the parents. We think probably the parents will be the guardians. They'll be open for additional private contributions each year from family, friends, parents, employers, churches, private foundations, and more. This is a pro-family initiative that will help millions of Americans harness the strength of our economy to lift up the next generation, and they'll really be getting a big jump on life, especially if we get a little bit lucky with some of the numbers and the economies into the future.
You know, the U.S. birth rate has been shrinking pretty steadily since the Great Recession of 2008, 2009. And this plan is meant to get it back going without resorting to illegal immigration. Remember, a lot of reasons why people say we should have open borders is because our birth rate is going down. There are other ways to fix that. This is just one of them. We're going to have to do a lot more. Corporate America is going to have to kick in. By the way, Dr. Gina and I are going to be talking about this a little bit more at the end of this program, at the end of this hour. So please stay tuned. All right, this month, Tax Network USA proudly celebrates our nation's birthday, honoring the freedom, resilience, and financial independence of our nation. To mark the occasion, they're offering 10% off all services through July 4th. If you're dealing with back taxes or missed the April 15th deadline, don't wait. The IRS is rapidly stepping up enforcement. Penalties can add up quickly, up to 5% per month, maxing out at 25% of your total tax bill just for not filing. That's on top of what you already owe. But there's good news. Tax Network USA can still help you turn things around. Whether you're self-employed, run a business, or your books are a complete mess, their team knows how to cut through the chaos and find solutions that work. Your consultation is always free, and getting ahead of the problem now could help you avoid harsh penalties, wage garnishments, or surprise bank levies. Take the first step. Call 800-905-8000 or visit tnusa.com/RAV. And don't forget, you'll get 10% off all services through July 4th as part of their celebration of our nation's birthday. Regain control of your finances with expert help from Tax Network USA. Coming up, all you hear from the mainstream news media is how RFK Jr. and the new health department are anti-vax and we're all going to die because of it. Yeah, they basically say that. But how will they explain the latest news of a new vaccine getting FDA approval? Oh, who am I kidding? They're not going to report on that. But you will hear about it here when American Sunrise Early Edition continues. All right, that's our control room in West Palm Beach filled with young people, and not one of them has seen Back to School, the Rodney Dangerfield comedy classic. Almost 40 years old, that movie, but it still holds up. I watch it regularly, especially the scene in the economics class. If you haven't seen it, I don't care what age you are. My father, who's almost 84, is a huge fan of that film, and these young kids, when they see it, will love it too. All right, let's take a look at where the markets will begin today. Speaking of economics, and we look like we have slightly lower opens on the market. Yesterday, we kind of been flattening out in the market yesterday, just kind of a baseline. We were up on the S&P, we were up on the NASDAQ, we lost 1 point on the Dow. When was the last time you saw the Dow close just 1 point higher or lower? Well, the answer is yesterday. Gold and silver looking pretty good. Crude oil starting to creep up. I don't like this, $65 a barrel, but I understand for all of you who are in the drilling business, this is getting a little bit closer to a decent price for you guys. So, of course, I care about you too. And I'm happy where gas prices are, so I'm not going to get greedy. Let's look at Bitcoin because it's getting close to that ceiling. Yeah, so it's at 109,000. Again, that ceiling that we've seen for the last many months right now has been 110,000, about that point. So we're almost at that high. Be very interesting to see if today or tomorrow we break above 110. That's what I'm looking for today. Okay, we knew it was coming. And now it's official. Warner Brothers Discovery has announced it is officially splitting into two companies. Wall Street likes it. The stock was up quite a bit yesterday. Now, one part of the company will now be its movie studios, its streaming businesses. The movie studios, all those DC superhero movies and stuff like that. They also have other stuff, of course. The other will be the cable channels, including the very troubling CNN. I have looked at this announcement of the split, which we knew was coming for many months now, as at least partially a way for them to get rid of CNN. Now, I have predicted for almost a year now that by the year 2026 or so, CNN will just be a streaming network. I don't think it's going to be an over-the-air channel anymore or anything like it very soon. It loses money. It doesn't have the influence it once had by far. And they still are paying some people on that channel a lot of money. Jake Tapper, Dana Bash. Nobody's watching. The numbers are incredibly low and their influence is zero. So I'm going to continue with that prediction. And this news of the split at Warner's, I think, backs me up on that. I don't think CNN will be something that you can just get over your cable station in a couple of years or so, maybe even sooner. At Apple's annual Worldwide Developers Conference yesterday, the company announced a new operating system for its Macs. It's called Tahoe. These tech companies, they always come up with an outdoorsy name, even though their products are for people who never go outside. But anyway, the company says the name is meant to invoke thoughts of skiing and the open mountains. So I decided to use some recent video of my pathetic skiing skills. Yes, that is me, just recently on the slopes. I'm a pathetic skier, just to show how tough it will be for longtime Mac users who don't usually get outside to use the new Tahoe system. That's about as good as I can do, about as well as I can ski, folks. Yes, that's really me, and yes, I really stink, and that's probably what I'm going to look like trying to navigate the new Tahoe system also. Please send your thoughts and prayers to everyone who watched that. Getting more serious right now, HHA Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has dismissed the entire CDC Vaccine Advisory Board. So naturally, the mainstream media is screaming about this to the rooftops. They're insinuating that this means the end of all vaccines in America. We're all going to die. It's just incredible. Meanwhile, the real work goes on. The department, the FDA, just approved a new vaccine from Merck designed to protect infants from the RSV virus. This brings a market rival to similar treatments from Sanofi and AstraZeneca. Sorry, that's a tough word for me. So far from saying that they don't want any more vaccines, the health department, the FDA, they're adding a vaccine where there already are two on the market. Now, again, we can all have our debates about vaccines, which ones are worth it, which ones aren't. But the narrative that you're going to see everywhere else about RFK Jr. today, about them getting rid of all vaccines, is just absolutely demonstrably false. They just approved a new vaccine in an already crowded market. It makes no sense. You want to talk about having a new guide board? That's great. The idea that all the shots that we take, some that we need, some that we, I guess, maybe don't, that's a different debate. The idea that everything's going to be taken off the market is absolute fear-mongering. Don't buy it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, start your engines. Moving America is sponsored by Artillery Tea Company. ArtilleryTeaCo.com. Use promo code AmericasTea for 25% off your first order. Artillery Tea is all natural, whole leaf. The tea bags are chemical free, and each tea bag can be used twice. Artillery Tea Company is family and veteran owned and operated, and a portion of your purchase goes to help veteran and first responder charities. ArtilleryTeaCo.com, promo code AmericasTea for 25% off your first order. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy is now just out. He's coming out right now and saying it plainly. The strict fuel efficiency standards placed on U.S. automakers by the Biden White House are illegal. That's what he thinks. And it's just his opinion, but it obviously has a lot of heavy weight. Duffy is also pointing out that the Republicans' one big beautiful bill, remember that? It aims to remove the financial penalties to punish automakers that don't meet those fuel economy standards. It also relaxes some of those standards in the first place. So if you don't meet the standards, not only you're not going to get a fine, but the standards are going to be relaxed. Look, folks, what you get per gallon, even in a fully gas-powered car or truck right now, is so much better than it was years ago. The industry itself has been doing this. The industry itself has been getting more efficient because they want people to buy cars and to be able to afford to fill them up. It's happening already. The free market is doing it. Those Biden numbers were ridiculous, and now Sean Duffy is saying they're flat out illegal. It's one of the things in the big, beautiful bill that you might want to look at before you decide you're against all of it. Of course, you have your choice on that. Now, I want to show you something right now. You're looking at what could become the Yugo of our generation. Remember the really low-price Yugo? They're bringing back the Yugo, but there's something else I want to tell you about. It's a car made in Romania. They make SUVs and cars. It's called the Dacia. That's the name of the brand in Romania. It has a number of vehicles that retail for less than $14,000 a piece. Here's the catch. You can only buy them in Europe right now, but they're really popular in Europe. That is the #1 imported car brand into Germany right now. You think so? The car looks pretty good and it's cheap. But since they're made in Transylvania, I'm not sure they work at night. Okay, that was a little vampire humor, but just kidding. This car looks interesting. At $14,000, even if they get slapped with the tariff, let's say a 50% tariff, that's still a bargain. I mean, would you buy that for 21 grand or for less than that? I mean, I would. All right. Stellantis made big news a few weeks ago when it announced it's bringing back the Jeep Cherokee next year. Again, I keep making this clear. Talking about the Jeep Cherokee, not the Jeep Grand Cherokee, which you see everywhere. The Jeep Cherokee has been out of commission for a couple of years, but they're bringing it back. So here are some sneak pictures of the interior and the outside of what the new Jeep Cherokee is going to look like. This is from Car and Driver. Listen, if you're a Jeep enthusiast, you know what I'm talking about. People love the whole Jeep culture in this country. And looking at these interior shots is going to make them excited. So I am to please on this program. Here it is. All right. And now for the most important part of the car for many of us, the cup holders. If you've been on a long trip with a lot of people, you know what I'm talking about. The cup holders are important, folks. According to many industry experts, Nissan remains the best company when it comes to supplying the most and best cup holders per car. I'm not kidding. They are like the kings of cup holders. And they even tweak the technology all the time to accommodate those big new water behemoths, you know, that Stanley Cup thing that they have. I'm not talking about the hockey trophy. I'm talking about those Stanley Cups that people bring to the gym that look like tankards. By the way, Nissan, has a minimum requirement of 8 cup holders for every full-size car and SUV. I mean, they are serious at Nissan. This alone, to me, is a reason to root for the struggling Nissan to make it. Don't go out of business, Nissan. You are the cup holder geniuses of our time. Okay, coming up, it's not just American politicians on the left stoking the violence in Los Angeles. Foreign leaders are getting in on it too. But that's what happens during an invasion, isn't it? And thousands of Harvard alums who couldn't be bothered to say one darn word about all the anti-Semitism in Cambridge are jumping at the chance to defend Harvard in the Supreme Court. Why? Because they hate Trump. That's all. I'll have the details on that when American Sunrise Early Edition continues. It's Tuesday, June 10th. Here are some of this morning's top stories. President Trump and the Pentagon get serious about making sure the violence in the streets of LA comes to an end. Over the objections of California Governor Gavin Newsom, they're sending in Mother Green and her fighting machine. That's 700 active duty Marines, by the way, to join the National Guard and restore order against illegal alien invaders. In New Jersey, it is primary day. It's the big off-year governor's election in that state. The Democrats running have all been trying to cast themselves as more anti-Trump than the rest. But is that the way to go in a state that almost went to Trump in the presidential election last November? We don't hear much from more than a few really influential Harvard alums when anti-Semitism runs rampant on campus. But when they go up against Trump, suddenly 12,000 men of Harvard and women join in the fight against President Trump's efforts to enforce civil rights laws. Again, 12,000 of them have just jumped in on a letter to the Supreme Court supporting their alma mater, as they, again, hurt the civil rights of their students. And environmentalist turned pro-Hamas supporter Greta Thunberg and her selfie flotilla arrive in Israel, where their attempt to support Hamas is going about as well as her attempt to get you to stop driving to go to Chipotle. She loses all the time. American Sunrise Early Edition continues now. Welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. Special welcome to those of you watching on Getter and Rumble and commenting on Getter and Rumble. A lot of comments about Rodney Dangerfield's masterpiece film, Back to School. Even my dad loves that film. I'm telling you right now, everyone, you got to watch it. It still holds up. But in all seriousness, we have a lot of important news to cover. I have some good news to say. It does appear that, sending in the National Guard, starting the process of bringing in the Marines, has quieted things down considerably in Los Angeles overnight. It's not over, but we're getting somewhere, and that's because you have a proactive law and order administration trying to do something about it. Welcoming you back and welcoming him back right now. He's a frequent guest on this program, Dr. Isaiah Hankel. He is the CEO of Overqualified.com. Dr. Hankel, as you see this violence continuing in Los Angeles, again, much more muted last night, thank goodness, and hopefully that trend will continue. But when you see it that it's being stoked by foreign leaders like Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum, who's basically owned by the cartels. The Mexican government is owned by the cartels. That's why she's in favor of these riots. But Dr. Hankel, this must ring echoes in your mind of the violent campus protests you and I often talk about on this program that are also funded and encouraged by foreign entities, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly right. And this is all that the left has. They don't have the American people. They try to gaslight us into thinking that the majority believes what they believe, but they don't. So they bring over people from these foreign countries and they get foreign buy-in to speak nasty about America, right? Whether it's Mexico, whether it's the foreign populations that are coming in through these universities, they're actively looking for people who are against America to import here to replace the American population. And this really came to a boiling point in LA, as you said. And it wasn't just the Mexican flags. You also saw some pro-Palestine flags, right? How do these people always end up with nothing to do all day? You know, I can't get out. I can't get an hour away from work to go to the grocery store, but they can stand in the streets all day long, burn cars, and get every single left talking head out there talking about how this is good for America and how it's actually the people that are trying to enforce the law that are causing the law to be broken. It doesn't make any sense. But I do think for Trump, the optics are good here overall because it shows people a clear contrast, right, to January 6th, right? So we have January 6th where there was an insurrection and people talked about it for years. The 100 grandmas in Alaska down there living in a cabin because they tracked them because they were in D.C. for a day. And then you have people that are burning cars in the street, surrounding government buildings, waving another country's flags with other countries' leaders, telling us to basically saying, keep invading. So I think this is just going to help Trump. And I think especially with him not backing down at all, because if you remember in 2020 with like Portland, with the National Guard, they didn't keep escalating after a certain point. So the fact that he went to the Marines, I think is a very strong signal. So I was happy to see that.
Yeah, a very important caveat. This will be a positive for Trump and this administration and for law and order. Listen, I'm not really on anyone's team. I'm on a good policy team. And if a good policy here is to show incredible strength and overwhelming force in the face of this kind of stuff, and if it does continue to quiet down, as it did last night in Los Angeles, and this continues, then that will be the great victory for the American people. And anyone who promoted that policy, doesn't matter what party they're from, but of course, not really hearing any Democrats do it, so you do the math. Speaking of foreigners, a Minnesota state representative, her name is Coyote Vang Her, had a surprise for everyone on the floor of the Minnesota State House yesterday. Check it out. Watch this.
Because his mother had died, my father, as the one processing the paperwork, put my grandmother down as his mother. And so I am illegal in this country. My parents are illegal here in this country.
All right, Dr. Engel, you and I have talked a number of times about how being a victim now is basically the most important thing for young people. They want to be a part of a victimhood class. Well, it's not just young people. That woman right there, by the way, let's talk a little bit about hyperbole. She's not an illegal alien. She's a naturalized citizen. Maybe her father was an illegal alien, but she is a naturalized citizen. She later came out and said, oh, yeah, I'm not an illegal alien. Sorry, I didn't mean that. Look, she may have come from parents who were illegal aliens, but that's unfortunately not necessarily to make you an illegal alien. She is a naturalized citizen. So what I'm trying to say here is that she knew she was just doing a victimhood pageant there, basically saying, I am also an illegal alien, and getting the attention. She got it. I gave it to her. I'm sorry. I'm not the only one. If I would have been the only one, I would have stopped. But you get my point. This is where we are in America right now. There's nothing heroic about being an illegal alien. It's just, for the Democrats, this is a victimhood status. And as you've pointed out many times, that's much more important than being a good person and being someone who does good things. It's whether or not you've been victimized. That to them is the most important thing, isn't it?
Yeah, virtue signaling. It's the new logic, right? So, and you brought up universities before. This is what our students are being indoctrinated with, and it's what we're being indoctrinated with legacy media. If you can play the victim the hardest, if you can race to the bottom, right? It's really valuing need over any kind of ability. That's what's going to get you attention today. And so you have people that will lie without consequence, or they will break the law without consequence. And I think once we can start amplifying the consequences so that these people really do go to jail or really do get something more than a slap on the wrist, they're going to stop being praised for it. And I think it's got to be consistent too. If we don't take people who are breaking the law and actually punish them, even if they are people that are currently in power. I know that, in the government doesn't like to put other people in the government, behind bars, even if they break the law, like the people that were impeding the ICE raids. But I think that's what we have to come back to start setting examples. That's the only way that you're going to see the victimhood mentality, the virtue signaling start to be rolled back, and that this country start to really being a country that relies on logic and reason again over virtue signaling.
Yeah, you made that point. That's very interesting. When some of these lawmakers or their staffers get arrested, you hear people, and this happened with Jerry Nadler last week when one of his staffers was arrested. He talks about how dare they come into our office and arrest us. He doesn't say they didn't do anything wrong. They basically have this belief that because they are in the political class, you can't arrest them. Now, if I had a friend who I felt was wrongfully arrested, or a coworker, I would say, hey, they're innocent. They didn't do anything wrong. I wouldn't say, you can't come into my home or my. Yes, you can. If the person committed a crime, you can do that, right?
Exactly.
I mean, honestly, it's outrageous. But they don't even listen to themselves talk. Another person who seems like she was manufactured from the diluted halls of Western academia is Greta Thunberg. She and her fellow selfie yacht, they call it the selfie yacht in Israel because that's all they do, take selfies. They are now in Israeli custody. They were peacefully taken in to the port of Ashdod, and Israel, the government there, is going to try to make them watch the videos of the October 7th massacres and atrocities, just so they can no longer say, if that's what they're saying, that they don't know what Hamas did to the people of Israel. And by the way, to other Muslims and people who aren't Jewish as well, this was a day of the worst terrorist attack in all of the world since 9/11. This is exactly what we're talking about. Here's someone who I think, again, by her parents, started even before college age, being brainwashed into thinking that the world was going to end tomorrow in the environment. She's clearly brainwashed here. President Trump says she needs to have anger management. I think she just needs to have new parents. Is it too late for her to go into foster care? I really don't know what's going on here, but this really looks like child and now adolescent abuse to me.
Doesn't make any sense. I think the optics here are good for us overall. Look, you have somebody who is trying to make a name for themselves in climate change. Couldn't get enough attention there, so now they've pivoted to whatever is the biggest victim mentality, virtue signaling cause on the left now, which is somehow free Palestine, right? She's not from Palestine. She just wants to free Palestine and get on these boats with the flags waving because it gets her attention. That's it. That's all it's about. She wants to get fake arrested so she gets attention too. She's a great example of exactly what our universities are producing and what the left really wants everybody. It's their dream to get on the news for doing something like this and to have a police, perp walk them into a building so that they can say, hey, I was the biggest victim here. I was taken advantage of by the state, when in reality, they're just being ridiculous, like you said.
Yeah. Dr. Engel, I only have about 30 seconds left, but the dichotomy of this story is something I have to talk to you about because we've talked about Harvard many times. The football march at Harvard, the name of their football song is 10,000 Men of Harvard. Well, 12,000 men and women of Harvard were quick to sign on to an amici brief to the Supreme Court. That's when you write an official letter to the court. It's like it's official brief. It goes into the caseload, the case documents, supporting Harvard in their fight against President Trump, trying to cut their funding because they're basically attacking the civil rights of their own students, particularly their Jewish students. Now, you couldn't get that many alums of Harvard to stand up for their fellow students. I mean, these are alums, so they're all part of that family. That they didn't care about. But as soon as Donald Trump is mentioned, they're willing to stand up for it. Now, again, there are some exceptions, people like Bill Ackman, a few of the other Harvard people who have spoken out, but nothing like 12,000 people signing on to a brief. This makes me so mad. I wish there had been 12,000 alums of Harvard to sign on and say, hey, we want better protections and for the basic civil rights of the students at Harvard right now. But no dice there, right, Dr. Henkel?
Exactly right. We can't get 1,000 people to say, hey, we don't want you to chase Jewish students across campus and be violent against Jews on campus, but we can get 12,000 people to say we don't like Trump and don't cut off our funding. That's really that's what the document says. Don't cut off our funding. But there's no reason to send this brief because all they're trying to do is make it fair and protect the Jewish students. That's all the Trump administration is trying to do, and stop DEI. That's it. But Harvard doesn't want that to happen.
Yeah, and again, sad enough that the administration, which I think is long corrupted, but for all those alums to be just as corrupted, this is scary. And they have a lot of leadership positions in this country, so that's even more scary. But yes. Dr. Isaiah Henkel, I wasn't frightened by talking to you as usual. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you, Jake.
All right, folks, in just a few moments, Dr. Gina from The Big Show is going to be joining us. We're going to be talking about President Trump and that announcement about that $1,000 per American new baby born in this country. I like this idea, and I'm going to talk about why it's so important. Dr. Gina is going to join me when American Sunrise Early Edition comes right back. Another look at Times Square. No, that isn't a fire in the middle. That's a steam. They let steam off from the manholes in New York all the time, so we don't have big water main explosions. For tourists seeing that, though, that's a little bit disconcerting. It's just steam. It's okay. Don't put your face in it, but it's okay. Welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. I'm going to say it right now, folks. We need more babies in this country. Babies with American citizen parents, that is. I don't care what race, color, religion you are. If you're an American citizen, please have kids. And 11 years ago, I noticed this was a problem, and I wrote about it for a CNBC editorial. And there's the headline. We need more babies. Seriously, is a problem. And I talked about how this is a serious problem in America. Now, the left tells you that we need fewer humans in America. The crazy left-wingers have been saying that since the time of child sacrifice. Not even kidding. I'm not even kidding about that. Joining us right now, very special guest, first time joining us here on American Sunrise Early Edition, Dr. Gina Loudon. Dr. G, I got to ask you about this. We saw this plan unveiled by President Trump yesterday, the $1,000 savings plan. I like it not so much for the money and for the numbers, but I like it for the message that it sends. It's telling people, it's getting people talking about this, which I think is the biggest positive. We need more babies, and we need to ignore the leftists who say, oh, get rid of the human race, no more people, we should start promoting plants, whatever they say. I like this messaging. I think you probably do too.
Yeah, Jake, first of all, thank you so much for having me on your show. It's a huge honor. I was waiting for my invitation for like a long time. But no, I'm honored to be here. And this topic is very near and dear to me. This was actually a huge dividing point between my late father, who just passed a year ago, and I. He was a zero population growth proponent. Straight out of the 70s, never really changed his mind on that, thought that he actually had bumper stickers that said the ultimate pollution solution is birth control. He actually invented those. He invented a lot of things. He was a brilliant man in a lot of ways, but this is where he and I really fell apart. And we debated this topic constantly, and I've been debating this topic with my dad since the 1980s. And so doing the research, finding out that, first of all, when you want to implement totalitarianism or communism, the first thing you do is take away a parent's love of being a parent, you take away society's love of children, right? And you start committing genocide. Well, we've been doing all three since the 1970s, as you know, in this culture. And it's going to ultimately result in some horrible societal ills if it's not reversed. So this is a great step. This says America loves babies. This says America is pro-life. This says, you're right, Jake, it really is not even so much about the functionality, although there are a lot of families that will really benefit from $1,000 coming into their babies, and they can save on that. They can build on that. It gives them that mentality instead of just flying by the seat of their pants like a lot of us did with our kids, including me. It gives them the idea of maybe I saved some money. So there's so much good in this. It's one of the few things in the world I can think that I'd love to spend $1,000 on. And it looks like President Trump has CEOs from all over the country on board to fund this. So there's really no cost to the average taxpayer.
That's right. Corporate America needs to get in on it more than just the funding, but also with more parent-friendly work rules,
yes,
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You make a really good point. I'm so glad. Some people might think you were being too dramatic there when you talked about how when you stop with the babies, you start with the genocide. But, I don't think that's exactly the path that I think we go down in the world. I want to give everyone some homework right now. Read the book, Children of Men. It's a fiction book. And if you want to cheat, you can watch the movie, Children of Men. And it does depict, it's a dystopian movie about how the world stops having babies because of some kind of virus. And yes, the world goes into war mode almost immediately because with no children to protect in our society, we start to become less responsible, to say the least. Children act as a major motivating force for all the good in the world. And if we stop having them and the numbers start to dwindle, you start having a world where people don't care about the future as much.
I think Gen Z gets this, Jake. That's the good news. Not all of them, but a lot more of them than did for millennials, I think.
Right. And the good news is now you can go to a 3-month-old and say, thank you for that $1,000. Here's some cereal. All right, everyone. The Real Big Show with Dr. G and the rest of the crew is coming up.
Jake.
That's called American Sunrise. This has been Early Edition with Jake Novak. I'm going to see you tomorrow. Thanks so much, Dr. G. We'll see you tomorrow.
American Sunrise is a great way to start your morning. Join us Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We've got the news of the day and some compelling interviews that you don't want to miss. Here's what you missed from yesterday.
It is a Monday, which means that the news just broke all weekend. Trump has deployed the National Guard, as I'm sure both of you heard, because of the riots happening in California. This, of course, is all over him trying to deport illegals and a protest that was actually called for by some on the other side. Newsom says he's going to sue the Trump administration over the deployment of the National Guard.
President Trump was with Marco Rubio recently, and he said, do you expect there to be charges? And he said, yeah, we're going to charge him. I think this is what you have to do. If the governor wants to act illegally and support those who are also acting illegally, Emily, I feel like you have to do something, and the fish rots from the head down.
I don't think that anyone had confidence that Gavin Newsom or LA Mayor Karen Bass were going to handle this in a way that was going to quell the protests, keep people safe. I mean, if you look back on just Gavin Newsom, right, the COVID-19 pandemic, handled that poorly. The wildfires that broke out, handled that poorly. Now with all of these riots, he's doing the exact same thing.
You can't hide the fact of what these people are doing anymore behind the major media groups that tend to ignore the truth and go with, oh, they're just peaceful protesters type narratives. So I think Real America's Voice, you guys are a huge boon to that solution and to expose the truth of what's happening. Hopefully nothing does. But if it does, there's no way they're going to hide it anymore.
There's absolutely no surprise that they're criticizing the president right now and that they haven't done anything to stop this violence. They've actually fueled it. So I'm just very, very grateful. Thank God that we have President Trump who's going to crack down on these protests as he has been already.
Prop 36 was a vote that said that we're tired of this lawlessness. So we are reaching a point where in California, the left is losing elections. The question now is whether they'll lose a statewide election in 2026.
Of course, we've got Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom. He made the statement on X yesterday afternoon saying Trump is sending 2,000 National Guard troops into LA County not to meet an unmet need, but to manufacture a crisis.
He didn't deploy the troops into LA to stop the movement of these people. He deployed the troops to the federal buildings to protect the buildings and to protect the federal agents, which is what didn't happen in Portland, if you remember. And it was weeks of riots there, and agents got hurt, and the tons of damage was done to federal buildings.
Just ahead on American Sunrise, chaos continues to break out in California after the Trump administration threatened to arrest California Governor Gavin Newsom. We have the latest for you on that. Plus, President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had a phone call yesterday. What was discussed, and did they find a common solution for Iran? We will take a look at that. And finally, Democrats continue to blame President Trump for the riots in Los Angeles. But is anyone really buying this? We have these stories and more as American Sunrise starts right now.
Good morning, America.
Welcome to American Sunrise.
Whether it's culture,
we have breaking news to share with you.
Politics. President Trump is joining us live now from Florida. We've got you covered. This is what it looks like to be a patriot. We have to protect the American family.
The American dream is still alive.
I'm David Brody.
I'm Terrance.
And I'm Dr. Gina.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Gina. We are live with you from the Palm Beaches. Emily, good to have you in studio with us. We also have Bo Davidson right over there at the desk. And good morning to you, Bo.
Good morning, Dr. Gina. I know it's a different Bo spelling. I know your son spells it differently.
Confuses me every time I see it in prompter. It's the funniest thing. There's something about the orientation of having my son's name spelled differently, B-O, and yours spelled B-E-O-U, that trips me up every time I say it. But that's okay. Apparently, I can't say anyone's name on the show. So, right, Emily?
Well, you called me bro, too, the other day, which I like. I'll take that.
That one's hilarious.
Well, we do call David Brody, our regular host on the show, D-Bro a lot. So that might have been where that was going. I don't know. I really don't have excuses for myself anymore. I just can't talk. It's just the way it is. But you guys, House Speaker Mike Johnson has said it would not be an overreach for the Trump administration to make some moves on some things. The core principle of maintaining peace through strength need to be done on domestic affairs as well, he said. Deploying Marines to Los Angeles protests, not heavy-handed, says Speaker Mike Johnson. For more, let's bring in Missouri Congressman Mark Alford. Congressman, do you agree with the speaker that this is not heavy-handed? Because, of course, the leftist media is saying this is militarization. Now, of course, they didn't have a problem with that in other instances in our history at all, but they have a problem with it when it's President Trump and the speaker, Congressman.
That's right. Good morning, Emily, Bo, and Dr. Gina. Good to see you. Yeah, they certainly didn't have a problem when 60 illegal aliens showed up on Martha's Vineyard and President Biden orchestrated for the National Guard to go there. Look, this is not an issue of the military going in to make arrests. That is not why the Marines are being sent in. They're being sent in by President Trump and Pete Hegseth to shore up support for the National Guard, who's showing up support for the police department, who really didn't do much when these riots started 5 days ago. These are anarchists. They are organized by Soros-funded groups who are dropping off pallets of concrete blocks, bricks, and stones. This is not an ordinary peaceful protest that just wants to deal with illegal aliens and deportation. This is an attempt, I believe, to overthrow what we hold so precious here in the United States of America. And Gavin Newsom is doing them no favors by being soft on this.
Well, Congressman, now we have police officers that have been hit in the head with the bricks that they've been throwing. We have police material damaged cars. We have damage to federal buildings. Isn't it the job of the federal government when the police, because it's a sanctuary city, have been told they can't do anything? Isn't it the job of the federal government to protect government property and government employees like police officers?
Well, it certainly is. And we didn't see this type of response during the Black Lives Matter movement after the George Floyd incident. And that's why things got out of control. President Trump is bound and determined not to let that happen again. We have to quell this violence, quell the anarchy, arrest those perpetrators who want to do the U.S. harm, put them behind bars, and send a strong message that we're not putting up with this. The American people voted overwhelmingly in a mandate, 77 million of them, to secure our borders, secure our economy, and secure our streets. And that's exactly what President Trump is doing, and I salute him for it.
Absolutely, Congressman. And I have to point out here, watching this video on screen, you don't see a single American flag. They're waving every other flag except for an American flag because they know that they're not standing for American values, Congressman. You know, I do want to shift gears here. All eyes have been on the chaos unfolding in Los Angeles, but The House is set to take up the rescissions package this week to vote on making some of the DOJ cuts permanent. Where do these efforts stand? Give us an update on that.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. We are codifying the president's executive orders, and we're clawing back some of this money that has not been spent yet. $9.4 billion. I know that's a drop in the bucket, but this is the first step. This is kind of a trial balloon to make sure that these rescission packages are going to work here in the U.S. House. I'm on the whip team. Everyone, and some people on my whip card that I'm asking how they're going to vote. I thought there were going to be a no on rescission. They are a yes, and here's why. We are codifying the president's executive orders. We are clawing back crazy things from programs like the USAID program and putting that money towards veterans. We're also defunding PBS and NPR. I was in the news business, Dr. Gina knows this, for 35 years. I competed against Sesame Street, all right? It's time for a big bird to fly the nest, to leave his mom's basement, to get out there in the public marketplace and sell Sesame Street and let it fly on its own. Time to clip the wings.
Congressman, I didn't know that about your previous career, but it makes sense because you have a very distinguished voice. So you definitely you're wonderful in terms of the media, and thankfully you're doing some great things in D.C. And speaking of D.C., Congressman, the Senate is continuing its work on the budget reconciliation bill. Do you expect to get it back and sent to President Trump's desk by the anticipated July 4th date?
Well, I do. President Trump kind of signaled that the July 4th date was aspirational, if you will. I want to hold fast to that. I think Speaker Johnson, one thing I've learned in Congress, Bo, is that if you don't set hard deadlines and you don't get things done, then it's a big disappointment to the American people. I'm trying to stick to this July 4th deadline in my head. I think the Senate wants to make a few changes. We are encouraging them. I know Speaker Johnson is. Don't make substantive changes like doing away with the SALT cap. That's going to bring it back over, and we're going to lose members of New York, California, and Illinois. I know that not everyone's in favor of raising the SALT cap to $40,000. But look, I would rather pay a little bit more from the federal Treasury in that than lose these members and lose control of the House. And that's exactly what will happen. It's a small investment to make sure that we retain the majority in the U.S. House, and so that 2027 beyond isn't about impeaching President Trump.
Well, Congressman, I am headed to the great state of Missouri, your state, on Friday, my home state. I can't wait to be there, and I'll be thinking about you and all the great things that you are doing for that state and for America. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Emily, Bo, Dr. Gina, thank you so much, and God bless you.
God bless you too. All right, you guys. Well, the Trump administration sends another 1,000 National Guard troops and 700 Marines to the area as protests continue there. California Governor Gavin Newsom has called this move un-American and added Marines should not be deployed on U.S. soil. Trump has also called Newsom incompetent, said he's a nice guy, but completely incompetent. For more, we take you to Los Angeles, where RAV correspondent, host of Law and Border, our own Ben Berquam, is on the ground there. Ben, there's a lot of violence that is not being reported in the media. Have you seen any?
Yeah, well, I got hit in the foot by a rock yesterday. It didn't hit me in the head, thankfully, but every single one of these events, anytime there's Antifa out at these events, you're going to have violence. It's part of their tactics. They use violence. They'll use so-called peaceful protests, and they do it all over the country, and then they'll have the violent leftist agitators, which are all part of the same groups that will come in and start throwing rocks and eggs and bottles and bombs. We're doing mortars, and we're a couple miles away from where or a mile and a half where the hotel is from where the epicenter is, down by the ICE building. But they were marching down the street down here yesterday. They were marching all around, doing these, they call them mortars. They're basically just small sticks of dynamite. They were looting. I mean, it's always that way. It always ends up with violence whenever you've got the left involved.
Yeah, these items don't just appear. I saw Representative Luna yesterday trace the exact origin of the money. She followed the money trail, which I always say to do here on this show, and she found out that the U.S. Communist Party and others involved with the Communist Party abroad are the ones actually funding this. Ben, what do you know about that?
Yeah. It's been going on for decades. This is an organized, well-funded group of individuals in America that have ties not to America. They don't have allegiance to America. They have allegiance to communism and communist ideology and communist organizations in countries overseas. In fact, it was funny yesterday. A car pulled up and there were 3 Chinese nationals that got out. 2 of them I got a little bit of an interview with were UCLA students. One was he said he was here on business, and they just started saying F Trump and F ICE, and it was just, it's interesting to see. Now, whether or not they were involved with the actual funding or part of the CCP is unknown, but there's no question about it. The CCP is involved with it, that these organizations are well funded. It's not spontaneous. It's not organic. And by the way, this goes all the way up to the top of the Democrat Party. They know this. This is the base of the Democrat Party now. It's a combination of this anarcho-communism and now jihadism. You've got Iran involved with this. You've got CCP involved with this. There are foreign enemies that are working to undermine our country, but we also have enemies within our country that are working with them to undermine our country.
Yeah, this is the useful idiot's tactic. There's no humanitarianism involved in this either, Ben. As you know, this is really about using disenfranchised minority populations to establish their own personal goals. This has absolutely nothing to do with helping people, right? Just a couple seconds left.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's right. In fact, they invited in all these illegals knowing that they wouldn't qualify to stay, simply to use them as pawns in this game that we're seeing now. That's exactly what this was. The strategy was from the beginning.
Old tried and true communist tactics still at play. It's amazing that we don't learn from history. Ben Bergquam, you keep telling us, though, and we appreciate it. You be safe out there. I don't know what those noises are behind you, but go take cover or something. Thank you for being here.
Will do. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Dr. G.
All right, coming up, Bo Davidson will get to the bottom of how the White House is responding to the L.A. riots, and later Israeli forces ceased to ship off Gaza that Greta Thunberg was on. What in the heck is that girl doing? We have the answers just ahead on American Sunrise.
This news break is brought to you by AMAC, Association of Mature American Citizens.
Welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm Emily Finn. Coming up, the situation with Iran continues. President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reportedly spoke to each other on the issue. But was there any ground made? We will take a look later in the show. But first, Bo Davidson is standing by with Brian Glenn for an update from the White House. And it's all sponsored by AMAC.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
Well, the feud between President Trump and California Governor Gavin Newsom continues to worsen as the riots continue rocking L.A. Newsom has sued the Trump administration after Trump sent the National Guard to L.A. to help stop the protest against ICE operations. Newsom said Trump is putting fuel to the fire and sending in the state National Guard without consulting the governor is illegal and immoral. So how is the White House responding? Well, for more on this, let's bring in Emily Finn. Emily's here on the show with me. You know, Emily, it's interesting when we think about the National Guard being called in. I even think back to Governor Tim Walz, well, Tampon Timmy, if you want to really be accurate about it, in terms of calling in the National Guard during the George Floyd protest. There's precedent for this, and it's also to protect federal assets, which I think is a very important distinction that we made on the show yesterday. So what are your thoughts on the National Guard being sent, and additionally, Pete Hegseth deploying some Marines, which I personally think is quite justified?
Absolutely, Bo. I mean, we talked about this on the show yesterday as well. This seems to be just continuing to be ongoing in Los Angeles. And this is why you need the National Guard. This is why you need Marines, because obviously Governor Gavin Newsom and L.A. Mayor Karen Bass aren't doing their job. And President Trump recognized that they have failed from the standpoint of leadership on so many different things throughout their times serving in office. And so he had to do something. He had to step up. And so I think it was a great decision to send in the National Guard. There was chaos unfolding. There are cars on fire. I mean, I was watching a segment from The Daily Show saying that Los Angeles is the most flammable city because it's always on fire. There's always something happening. And I just want to point out as well, you brought up Tim Walz, but Gavin Newsom, he also called in the National Guard during the George Floyd protests during 2020. So it's just a very different, political response from the governor when it comes to these protests in Los Angeles.
Yeah, and Emily, just to put a cap on that, I was thinking about what you said earlier about the flags, the Mexican flag, the Palestinian flag. If these people are connected to foreign countries, that seems to indicate insurrection to me. It's coming from foreign influences. You talk about the CCP. Ben Bergquam's talking about being tied to the CCP. We're talking about foreign influence in our own domestic affairs. So we always talk about enemies, foreign and domestic. I think we're actually seeing both of them play out. So, Emily, we'll keep an eye on this, and, the rest is to be determined, but I think President Trump is doing the right thing by deploying the National Guard and the Marines.
Absolutely.
Well, coming up, President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reportedly have a phone call and discussed Iran. Was any major ground made? We will take a look. And later, Democrats continue to blame President Trump for the protest in Los Angeles, but is anyone listening to it? We discuss soon. But first, a quick look at today in history. It was on this date in 1752 that founding father and legendary inventor Benjamin Franklin flew a kite in a thunderstorm and found the connection to electricity. Franklin reportedly became very interested with the idea of electricity in the 1740s and spent roughly 10 years conducting experiments. And then that fateful kite was flown. And the rest, as they say, was history. We'll be right back.
back to American Sunrise. Israeli officials seized the aid boat to Gaza carrying environmental activist Greta Thunberg. Officials say Israeli naval forces got on the ship and seized it as the vessel was trying to break the naval blockade of Gaza. The ship was operated by a pro-Palestinian Freedom Flotilla coalition, and it wanted to raise awareness to the situation in Gaza. For more, let's bring in the chairman of Judaism 3.0 think tank, Jerusalem Post writer, and author of The Assault on Judaism. The existential threat is coming from the West, Gol Kalev. Thank you so much for joining American Sunrise, Gol. How could anyone think this idea was going to work?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, let's be clear. This is not about helping the Gazans. This is about opposing Israel. If Greta or somebody thought that she wants to raise awareness to the situation of Gaza, you can just turn on the BBC or CNN, and they're airing nonstop footage from how horrible the conditions are in Gaza, that Gaza is a demolition site, and they're correct. It is inhumane to live under the rubbles in Gaza, to be human shields for Hamas in buildings that can demolish at any time, living above Hamas tunnels with explosives. So the question, though, is what you do about it. And this is where there is a very clear demarcation between what President Trump on the one hand is proposing and what Europe and its proxies are proposing on the other hand. President Trump is saying to the Gazans, we're going to get you out of here. We're going to give you the basic human right to flee a war zone, a right that's given to any other person around the world in the middle of the war. We're going to stop this ludicrousy that was led by the Biden administration of Europe to deny you this human right to leave a war zone. And the Europeans are saying, over my dead body, you guys got to stay in your demolished homes in Gaza as human shields for Hamas, because this is part of the assault on Judaism. And this is not hearsay. This is the British government is saying it openly. A few weeks ago, they even sanctioned the Israelis and individuals, Israeli and Israel, for trying to get the Gazans to move to a humanitarian zone where they can be protected from Hamas, where they can get food and access to medicine and whatever it is that they need. We got sanctioned for that. A lot of people are saying this is a proxy sanction against Trump. This is not about moving the Gazans out of Gaza. This is moving them from where they're in harm's way into a safe place where they can get food. And the British sanction us maybe as a warning shot to tell Trump, well, if you try to move the Gazans out of Gaza, we'll sanction you in America. This is quite a ludicrous situation. As we spoke all along, this is part of an attempt to negate the idea of the Jewish state, a very aggressive attempt coming out of Europe that's expanding arena after arena after arena. It is a way to negate the idea of Judaism, and it is a proxy for an assault on America.
Gal, back to the Thunberg issue. I really hate that we even have to discuss this because I do believe this is sheerly a publicity stunt. She is bitterly clinging to her 4 minutes of fame that she got the last time she pulled a stunt. They're calling this the selfie sailboat. There was less than a carful of any kind of aid. So this wasn't about bringing aid. This was about a publicity stunt. This was about Greta self-promoting. She's been diagnosed with 3 different mental impairments. It's not surprising to those of us watching her that she's not altogether in a safe space. And those supporting her are really not supporting humanitarian aid. I think we need to make that clear because I think there are a lot of young people that can get confused by some of the messaging here.
Absolutely. This is opposing Israel. If she wants to help the Palestinians, she should have a flotilla to Brussels or to the UK that are stopping Gazans from leaving Gaza, not into Israel, where we're suggesting that those Gazans in dire conditions move to humanitarian zones, and then, as Trump is suggesting, move elsewhere, relocate to a place where you can have a better life, just like any other people in a war zone.
Also, Gol, there is a new report in CBS News that I'd like to get your take on. The headline reads, opponents say Netanyahu's decision to arm clans in Gaza to help fight Hamas will come back to haunt Israel. We've seen the anti-Hamas protests break out over there. How do you see this playing out, Gol?
Yeah, this is a part of warfare. This is a tactic used, by various militaries. The enemy of the enemy is my friend. It's been used by the Americans in Iraq, by Israel in Lebanon in the 80s. So, the idea is that you can have, you'll find allies in a brutal war. But it's important to know that this is a tactical, war decision about how to prosecute the objective. The war objective is one of which is to obliterate Hamas. This is not in the context of a long-term solution to Gaza. As we spoke in the past, there's been a lot of focus on who's going to govern Gaza. Is it going to be Hamas 2.0 or a gentler, kinder version of the Palestinian Authority? That's not as important, because as long as there's a population in Gaza that's been indoctrinated for 20 years with hate, with values of savagery, murder, and rape, then Gaza will continue to be a threat. It'll continue to be a physical threat, not just to Israel, but to Western civilization, an ideological threat, because people like Greta and Europeans and others are going to use the situation in Gaza to oppose Israel ideologically.
Well, we know that the United States is certainly doing what they can to try to help out. We have seen reports that President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, they spoke on the phone yesterday. The topic of Iran was reportedly brought up. What more can you tell us about this?
Yeah, Iran remains, we tend to forget that, but Iran remains a very big threat. They lost their proxy in Gaza. They lost their proxy in Syria, but they still have Hezbollah in Lebanon. They still have Iraqi militia, Shia militias in Iraq. And they have the Houthis in Yemen, as we're reminded virtually every day here in Israel when we hear the sirens, where their missiles are coming in. And mostly, they're continuing on their fast-moving trajectory to acquiring nuclear weapons. This is the existential threat to Western civilization. So President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu have been working diligently in trying to stop that. There have been ongoing dialogues, as you know, and as you correctly stated, this phone call yesterday. And I just hope that when they spoke, they didn't just focus on the physical threat that is coming from Iran and its proxies, but also on the ideological threat that is coming from Europe and its proxies, because it is escalating. President Trump made a bold decision to sanction 4 judges in the ICC, but the ideological assaults coming from Europe is much broader than that. We've seen sanctions. We're seeing threats to cancel trade agreements that just got word that the British are going to basically try to cancel the vote of about 10% of the Israeli electorate because they don't like the result. They're going to sanction the elected officials of Israel. And now we have word from France and other countries in Europe that they're going to reward October 7th by declaring a Palestinian state. I mean, this is sending a message to the world and to maybe people in Europe that if you want to get something done, engage in brutal terrorism. And Ambassador Mike Huckabee, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, had a very strong reaction to the French proposal. He said to the French that if you're so interested in getting a Palestinian state, then why don't you carve out a section of the French Riviera and create a Palestinian state in the French Riviera? And I can only imagine what's going to be the reaction of progressives and pro-Palestinian groups. They might say, hey, the French Riviera is less than 1% of the territory of France, and Muslims in France are soon going to be 20%. This is injustice. Bernie Sanders might say that the French Riviera is the world's largest prison camp. So we're facing here a dual assault, a physical assault from Iran and its proxy, ideological assault from Europe and its proxies. President Trump and the Prime Minister Netanyahu are addressing this, and I can say what I always say, that in Israel, people on the left and on the right are just so happy and thrilled that the President of the United States is Donald Trump, who's countering those threats.
Absolutely. Golkalev, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Coming up, everyone has that one hobby that brings them joy, but how much relief does gardening bring? We have the answers next on American Sunrise.
Sunrise. I'm Dr. G. Thank you so much for joining us today. It is now time for today's health news, sponsored, of course, by The Wellness Company. Under the microscope today, the health benefits of gardening. I love this one. Gardening, a very popular hobby across the U.S., and it turns out it can be beneficial to your health as well. Researchers in Australia found out that those who gardened had a 36% lower risk of developing dementia. Another study showed that it led to a 42% less likely chance of developing sleep issues as well. So lots of benefits to gardening. Also, it reduces stress, as you can imagine, and also reduces depression. So having a hobby like gardening, really any hobby, but especially gardening, brings enjoyment not just to yourself, but sometimes to other people as well. And there's the whole bed of data out there that if you stand barefoot in the yard for even just a few minutes every single day, that grounding theory scientifically is being proven again and again, not even to mention all the good sunshine. You get all the good vitamin D. So the grounding, the vitamin D, less depression, less Alzheimer's, got to get out in the garden. New administration in Washington, D.C. has brought a lot of positive changes, too, when it comes to fixing our broken healthcare system. The reality, though, there's only so much a government can do. If we really want to make America healthy again, that has to start at home. And that's where the Wellness Company comes in. You see and hear from their doctors all the time on this network, and you know their products are the gold standard, keeping you safe and healthy. The Wellness Company gives you the opportunity to make sure you are prepared for whatever comes your way with their series of prescription medical kits. These kits, of course, contain an assortment of life-saving medications and guidebooks to assist in the proper use of the meds. Additionally, the Wellness Company offers a variety of products from parasite cleanses to methylene blue, weight loss, and so much more. Help you stay healthy and live longer and have a more satisfying life. Make America healthy again. It starts at home. Do your part. Protect the health of yourself and your family. Go to twc.health/RAV. Give it an order. That's twc.health/RAV. Use the promo code RAV. That'll save you 10%. All right, for more, let's bring in the Chief of Disaster and Emergency Medicine for the Wellness Company, Dr. Kelly Victory. Dr. Victory, good to have you. I want to give you first a chance to comment on that garden segment I just discussed. The grounding we're hearing. I don't know what it is about going and standing barefoot outside, but I've been trying to do it in my backyard. Got to admit, I'm not a great gardener. I do have some flowers and things, but I always think that building a raised garden is probably well worth its weight in gold in terms of the investment. And then you've got the whole vitamin D thing we're hearing more and more about, standing out in the sunshine. And, you know, just enjoying the sunshine. It's something that's been a little lost on our culture for a while. Tell us.
Well, I'm a big proponent of gardening, so I'm glad to hear the actual data behind it. I think there's something that's very, very beneficial, Gina, about getting outdoors, first and foremost, as you said, vitamin D, being away from your screen, putting your phone down, and getting your hands in the dirt. I happen to have a greenhouse. I grow multiple varieties of tomatoes and arugula and greens and kale and spinach. I grow a lot of herbs, and it's very, very satisfying to plant a seed and watch it grow. It sounds simplistic, but I think we have gotten so far away from the basics, from really watching something grow and come into fruition and actually go and pick the fruits of your labor in reality. So I find it very, very comforting. It certainly gets you away from all of the negativity that we see every day on TV or hear on the news, and again, gets you away from that screen. I don't get a chance to walk in the grass as much as perhaps you do because I live in an area that's pretty ranchy, but I suggest that people get their hands in the dirt, whether that's just planting a pot of flowers for your deck, or if you have the good fortune to be able to plant a big vegetable garden outside. Whatever you do, it's well worth it.
Yeah, there's no excuse for us in Florida. We don't even need a greenhouse. We have sunshine year round. I've got to get a garden going. Here's my personal commitment to you and our viewers that I'm going to get on that. But Doctor, we heard yesterday the big breaking news, of course, was that RFK has dismantled rather, much of the problem regarding some of these mRNA vaccines. He is revamping the entire thing, and he says this is necessary. You have to clean house. I posted this immediately on X when I saw it. He says you have to clean house because otherwise there's no way the American public can trust after everything that happened to us in COVID. Talk to us about this.
Well, as you said, Bobby Kennedy Jr. is doing, I think, great work at HHS. It's been a lot slower than many people would have wanted, myself included. I had hoped that he would come out and just remove from the market the mRNA vaccines on day one. That's really not realistic, unfortunately, given all of the forces pushing against that. So what he did yesterday was a very, very important move. He's clearing house from the advisory committee, ACIP, the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. This is the group of people who have been entrenched for well over a decade, many of them, who advise which vaccines should make it onto the childhood schedule, for example. And unfortunately, Americans with good reason have lost complete faith in this public health entity and in the advice and guidance of this advisory committee because they have allowed vaccine after vaccine after vaccine to get onto that schedule, enjoy the blanket liability protection that they have because they are on the childhood schedule without the necessary data to support their inclusion. And when I say the data, I mean not only data on efficacy, whether or not the darn shot works to prevent the disease that it's supposed to prevent, but also the safety data. Unfortunately, it normally takes 6 to 8 years for a vaccine to make it to market, if it ever makes it at all. Many of them fail ahead of time. But what we are finding out is that the recent safety studies that have been done have been woefully inadequate. When you fast forward to where we are with COVID, those, quote, vaccines, they're not actually true vaccines, they're a genetic therapy, they didn't go through anywhere near the type of safety testing that they should have before they were rolled out to the public, let alone mandated for the millions and millions of people who were forced to receive them.
Yeah, I just a couple of weeks ago attended the Maha Roundtable with RFK, had a chance to talk to him about everything happening. And, the thing is that so many of us for so long felt like we were the only ones out there kind of screaming a soul voice in the wilderness. But Dr. Victory, you at the Wellness Company and others have been out there for a long time. Do you find that the collaborative nature between doctors has changed in the last couple of years from before, where so many seem to be sort of hiding?
Well, I do think that this has been a great wake-up call, Gina. Many physicians, myself included, believed what we were taught in medical school. Unfortunately for me and for some others, COVID was the great existential crisis where we realized that much of what we were taught in medical school simply wasn't true. Medical schools are largely supported and funded by the big pharmaceutical companies, and therefore a lot of what we were taught, a lot of what we learned, quote unquote, with regard to things like vaccines simply isn't true. And as I said, the safety data wasn't there to support it. So many physicians, as a result of the debacle that was COVID, not only the horrific public health response, but the disaster that the mRNA shots have been, many doctors have begun to wake up. It's taken some a longer time because many people have had a hard time getting their arms around the idea that they suggested these things for their patients. Yeah. That they, in fact, many physicians, for example, said, if you don't get your child vaccinated, I don't want to have you in my practice. Right. And so they've got to understand now that they may have suggested or mandated, in a way, things that weren't actually in the best interest of their patients' overall health and wellness. But more doctors, as you said, are waking up and coming to the table and saying, we can do better than this.
This is just my approximation, but I would guess that 5 to 10 years ago, the wellness company couldn't have even operated. So it is a gift of freedom and a gift really from the patriots of this country to restore freedom to the level that we can actually even discuss these things freely without being canceled, and that we can collaborate, and that there is a company out there like the wellness company that can provide the kinds of things that traditional Rockefeller physicians might not be willing to do because they're still so indoctrinated. Dr. Victory, thanks to you and thanks to the wellness company for all you all do.
Thanks for having me.
Pope Leo criticizing the rise of political nationalisms throughout the world. We'll discuss his latest message from the Vatican. Stick around. The fun starts again in just 2 minutes.
Welcome back to American Sunrise. You know that feeling when your coffee actually does what it's supposed to? It clears your head, it lifts your energy, doesn't leave you crashing an hour later. Well, that's what good coffee is supposed to feel like. And that's what you get with 1775 coffee. This coffee is organic, single origin, high altitude, and small batch roasted. That means no toxins, no acidity, no jitters, just smooth, clean coffee that fuels your day without weighing you down. And right now they're offering a free starter kit, 3 bags of premium coffee plus exclusive coffee merch, including a matte black tumbler, frother, gold cup, gold scoop, or reusable K-cup filter. You pay for 2 bags of coffee and $17.75 covers the rest. Whether you drink whole bean, ground coffee, or K-cup pods, you choose your option. This means you're paying less than $1 a cup for coffee quality you won't find in most stores. So just head over to 1775coffee.com/RAV and grab your starter kit while the offer is still available. Well, now that we are caffeinated, it's time to stay awake, not woke. The feud between President Trump and California Governor Gavin Newsom continues to worsen as the riots continue rocking L.A. Newsom has sued the Trump administration after Trump sent the National Guard to L.A. to help stop the protest against ICE operations. Newsom said Trump is putting fuel to the fire, and sending in the National Guard without consulting the governor is illegal and immoral. So how is the White House responding? Well, for more on that, let's turn to Brian Glenn, our chief White House correspondent in D.C. Brian, what are you hearing from the White House about this? I've seen them trading barbs. What's kind of the official statement from the White House?
Well, good morning, Bo. Yesterday, during that roundtable with business leaders, someone asked that very question, and President Trump is adamant. He is really going to make it known that he is not going to tolerate this lawlessness in the streets of America. So it is just kind of questioning, Bo, of why someone, the governor of California, would be so defiant and having help
maintaining law and order in his city when it's clearly in chaos. We've seen the images on our screens, all of the burning of police cars, the Waymo robo-taxis being lit on fire, the vandalism to government and city buildings there in California. So it doesn't matter what Gavin Newsom wants. That doesn't matter. It's what the American people want. It's what President Trump wants. And obviously, if you live in that area, you do not want to see your city burn. And President Trump is not going to allow that chaos to continue, as we're seeing some of it start to die a little bit. But I think we're days away, perhaps even weeks away, from having this completely come to an end.
Yeah, I think it's ironic, Brian, when you saw Gavin Newsom say, well, these people just want to live their lives. They're just trying to live their lives. Do people live their lives by throwing, ice bricks at people and cinder blocks? I don't think that's people wanting to live their lives, including a multitude of flags that are not our own. That seems completely counterintuitive.
Yeah.
What is your sense in terms of when President Trump on the helicopter the other day coming out of it said, if it were up to me, yeah, I'd arrest him. He's daring Tom Homan to arrest him. Do you think it gets to that?
I don't think so, unless Gavin Newsom physically walks out there and does some type of personal stance against these ICE agents. I happen to think that Gavin Newsom wants to be arrested. He sees exactly what it did with President Trump's political campaign. It catapulted him, the mugshot, the infamous mugshot. I think Gavin Newsom and LA Mayor Karen Bass believe that same type of getting arrested would help their career. But here's the problem. Trump did nothing wrong. Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom are destroying their city and their state, and that needs to be held accountable. So I don't think the mugshot or an arrest on any one of those individuals will help them at all. Matter of fact, I think it's political suicide. I think we see political suicide in front of us right now. And if Gavin Newsom thinks this helps any kind of future bid for president from the Democrat Party, which I said 4 years ago he would be the one that would officially run, not sure that's going to work out well after all this plays out, but we'll see. As a nationwide protest, Bo, is planned around the nation this Saturday on the very thing. It's the No Kings protest, 1,500 cities around this country. No plan for that protest this Saturday because of the military parade. So smart organizers there, do not come to our Capitol with that anarchy, because we have enough people on the ground to take care of you.
And speaking of that military parade, Brian, and everything coming up, what else is on the president's schedule today? Are you going to be flying with the president today to Fort Bragg?
Yes, and if you're asking why aren't I wearing a jacket, and
I was thinking that.
Why don't I suit and ties? Because I am jumping on Air Force One here in a little bit. We're going to fly to Fort Bragg, take a short helicopter trip as well, go visit some troops down there. President Trump visiting our men and women who serve this country, just a part of the celebration of the 250 that really comes together on Saturday. We'll have live coverage on the ground of this whole event today, probably starting around 1 when we motorcade over to Joint Base Andrews. So just whatever program you're watching on Real America's Voice and on social media, we're going to have this unfolding as if you're in the helicopter and you're in the motorcade.
Well, sounds like, Brian, it's going to be me that's going to be tossing to that, because I'm here all day doing these news breaks. So I'll make sure to keep an eye out for you. Have a safe trip down to Fort Bragg, and we look forward to your coverage today. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Bo.
Absolutely. Well, Pope Leo's Pentecost Sunday message focused heavily on the surge of political nationalism worldwide. We will have a deep discussion on the Pope's words when American Sunrise returns. Don't go anywhere.
beginning, God created the heaven and the earth.
From the lakes of Minnesota.
All right, welcome back to American Sunrise. It's time now for our moment of faith, brought to us by Lee Greenwood and the God Bless the USA Bible. Let's check out today's Bible verse from Psalm chapter 62, verse 5. It says, "My soul waits silently for God alone, for my expectation is from him." Beautiful, beautiful words there. Now, on Pentecost Sunday, the feast day celebrating when the Holy Spirit descended upon Jesus' apostles, Pope Leo spoke from the Vatican about the surge of nationalist political movements across the world. While the Pope did not mention any specific countries or politicians by name, he did say, quote, "Where there is love, there is no room for prejudice, for security zones separating us from our neighbors, or for the exclusionary mindset that, tragically, we now see emerging also in political nationalisms." As the first American pope, speculation is rising about who he is directing the message toward. For discussion, let's welcome to American Sunrise, Father Frank Pavone, the director of Priests for Life. Thank you so much for joining American Sunrise.
Always a pleasure.
So, Father, all right, help me understand this. I am a Catholic girl who also wants to make America great again. I mean, is the Pope telling me that that's an oxymoron here?
Absolutely not. It is completely consistent with Catholic teaching, with Christian teaching overall, and with the scriptures to be an America First citizen. In fact, I think it's the only way to be consistent with scripture, but that's another discussion. What we have to understand is this, when the Pope speaks, when he gives a homily, he's not speaking from a blank slate. It's like, okay, now I'm going to rewrite all the teachings of the church. We have the teachings of the church laid out in the Catechism, and there's another document, it's actually a book, called the Compendium of the Social Teaching of the Church. And we have to always keep in mind that anytime the Pope speaks, it's within that framework. So we have to reference what he says against what those other documents say. So what does the Compendium say about nationalism? It does distinguish between patriotism, love of one's country, that's a virtue, and then it warns us we are not to, and he used these words, we are not to be exclusionary. Well, the America First movement, the MAGA movement, is not exclusionary at all. We're not saying we're never going to welcome anybody from any other country again because we don't want to help the other countries. In fact, the other countries don't matter, and we don't want to be associated with them. We don't want to let anyone into our country. Are those the messages we hear from the MAGA movement? Of course not. We want people to come in. We're the most generous country in the world, and the most welcoming, and we're always going to be that way. So we have to be careful that we don't let those who oppose the America First movement, and there are many of them, start trying to use the Pope's words as a baseball bat, for their political agenda. Let's not allow that to happen. Let's be strong. Let's put these words in the context of the church's teaching, and let's make sure that we push back against anyone who tries to manipulate the Pope's words.
Father, I think that was really, really well said. I always love when you join American Sunrise. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, we'll be back with the second hour in just 2 minutes. Stick around.
Introducing the limited edition God Bless the USA Bible, inspired by Lee Greenwood's hit song and the most recognized patriotic anthem in America, God Bless the USA. The God Bless the USA large print leather-bound King James Bible also contains America's founding documents, the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, and the Pledge of Allegiance, along with a handwritten chorus to Lee Greenwood's song, God Bless the USA. With its large print and slim design, this Bible invites you to explore God's Word anywhere, anytime. The God Bless the USA Bible makes the perfect gift and cherished family heirloom keepsake to pass on to future generations. Designed for an easy reading experience in the trusted King James Version translation, this large print Bible is perfect to take to church, Bible study, work, and for traveling. Order yours today at GodBlessTheUSABible.com.
Coming up on the second hour of American Sunrise, all eyes on Los Angeles amid the protests from federal agency raids, the latest in what's become an absolute chaotic scene in the city of Angels. That's just ahead. Plus, don't tempt Trump. Gavin Newsom, you should listen. California's governor challenges the Trump administration to arrest him, and the response Trump is giving says it's a great thing. We're going to discuss the mounting legal clash between the federal government and the state of California. Also, Rav's extensive coverage of the mayhem in California includes a live report from Los Angeles. See for yourself the destruction caused by these violent protesters that you won't see anyplace else. This is all coming up in Hour 2 of American Sunrise, and we start right now.
Good morning, America.
Welcome to American Sunrise.
Whether it's culture,
We have breaking news to share with you.
politics, President Trump is joining us live now from Florida. We've got you covered. This is what it looks like to be a patriot. We have to protect the American family.
The American dream is still alive.
I'm David Brody.
I'm Terrance.
And I'm Dr. Gina.
Good morning, everybody. I am Dr. Gina. We are live with you from the Palm Beaches. Bo Davidson and Rav contributor Emily Finn are both here in studio with me in Palm Beach. It's great to have everybody together in bodily form right here.
The whole crew is here. The whole gang is here. This is awesome.
I miss my co-hosts most definitely, but they never, almost rarely anyway, rather, get to be in studio with me. So it's nice to have you guys. The anti-ICE riots happening in L.A. Emily, you and I both used to live in California. Trump has sent another 2,000 National Guard troops, bringing the total to more than 4,100. Also, Pentagon has sent around 700 Marines to the protests to work with L.A. law enforcement. I was absolutely shocked, Bo and Emily, yesterday to see police officers being whacked in the head with bricks people were throwing off of bridges. It was one thing to see the destruction of property, the destruction of buildings. That's the reason why President Trump was really mandated to bring in some military to protect federal property there. But to see police officers actually being whacked in the head, our own Ben Berquam was hit in the foot with a rock. This is a Communist Party 101 sort of performance, isn't it? Emily.
It absolutely is. And imagine being in the shoes of the police officers, the National Guard members, the Marines that are there. Everything is putting you on edge. You see water bottles flying through the air, and some of these agitators are actually freezing the water bottles so they can do even more damage once they hit the police officers. That could knock someone out. I mean, it's really, really, look at those images on your screen. That is happening in America. That is, it's disgraceful. It's awful when you think about the nature of what they're even protesting for. You don't see a single American flag, Bo, as I pointed out earlier. It's really, really tough to see. And I stand by President Trump, and I know that I think that you guys would join me in saying that he had to step up and do something. And so I think it was a smart move on his part to send in the National Guard, send in the Marines. And it still is not completely under control to this point.
Yeah, and that actually makes three of us, guys. I lived in California as well. I lived in the LA area for about 5 years. Yeah, and in the early part of my acting career, I was out there, and I had a decent time. I remember being in Venice, California, and seeing the protesters, and they were saying, Bush lied, people died. That really was the peaceful version of what we're seeing now. I never got to see anything like this, and I'm glad that I didn't, because I would probably fear for my life. And my thoughts too were just kind of on Emily's note about the flags and everything. Like, what are these? Like, these people have nowhere else to be. I thought our immigrants were supposed to be contributing to society. That they just want to live their lives. That they just want to pursue the American dream. Would you say that these thousands of people, Gina, are just living the American dream? Is that what their idea of it is?
I would say if this is a mostly peaceful protest, then it is incumbent upon our president to give them a mostly peaceful stop to the violence, because it can only be mostly peaceful, Bo, because this has not been mostly peaceful. I'm not going to say there aren't a couple of demonstrators there that are perhaps peaceful, but these are paid communist operatives. Make no mistake about it. Emily, you point to the sophistication of having the water bottle suddenly show up, being able to freeze them, etc. Bo, you got to get to headlines, but I'll tell you what, this is the line that the left is reporting on this is straight up lies, Bo.
Yeah, it is. And it needs to stop. Thank you for your attention to this matter, as President Trump would say. Let's get to these headlines. Anti-ICE rioters in Los Angeles, as you just saw on screen, have been spitting upon and burning the American flag and chanting expletives against President Trump. Meanwhile, the flying of the Mexican flag, other Latin American flags, and even the Palestinian flag have become symbols of the LA anti-ICE riots. The LAPD Central Division stated that an unlawful assembly has been declared for the downtown LA area. Meanwhile, the DOJ has charged another Chinese researcher with smuggling biological materials into the United States. The new case accuses the Chinese researcher of trying to smuggle packages containing concealed biological material related to roundworms into the country by sending multiple packages that contain the material to a lab in the United States. And finally, a Colombian presidential candidate was shot 3 times over the weekend at a campaign event in Bogota. Miguel Uribe Turbay, a 39-year-old state senator, was shot twice in the head and remains in intensive care. Police arrested a 15-year-old suspect at the scene. Turbay remains in extremely serious condition as doctors monitor his condition. And those are your headlines. Let's toss it back to Gina now.
All right, thank you, Bo. Let's turn to the Dare and Double Dare showdown happening between the Trump administration and California Governor Gavin Newsom. I just said that. President Trump initially suggested border czar Tom Homan should arrest him because Newsom challenged the Trump administration to arrest me, he said, amid Trump deploying National Guard troops to Los Angeles due to the anti-ICE protests. Here are some of Trump's words in response to Newsom. Listen to this.
I would do it if I was Tom. I think it's great. Gavin likes the publicity, but I think it would be a great thing. He's done a terrible job. Look.
Mr. President!
I like Gavin Newsom. He's a nice guy, but he's grossly incompetent. Everybody knows.
You caught me taking a drink of my tea. Sorry about that. Newsom did respond to what Trump just said, saying, quote, the president of the United States called for the arrest of a sitting governor. This is a day I hoped I would never see in America, he said. I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican. This is a line we cannot cross as a nation. This is an unmistakable step toward authoritarianism. The thing is, though, guys, it will cost lives. And if lives are being cost, isn't it incumbent upon the president to point to the fact that a governor is breaking laws? Well, I don't know, Emily. Let's find out what John Solomon has to say. He's the editor-in-chief of Just the News. Welcome to the show, John. John, your thoughts on this? Because really, I feel like if President Trump didn't intercede, he would have been blamed for whatever ensued, which would have been far worse than any sort of military involvement, as we're seeing now, which is, by the way, mostly peaceful, I'll say again.
Yeah, listen, I think at the end of the day, this Trump administration learned from the failures of the summer of 2020. They're not going to repeat those failures. And so getting the guard there early, suppressing the violence before it can spread is an important part. Reminding the people that what is going on that prompted these protests was a lawful exercise of police power to get some of the most heinous criminals off of our street. These are people that broke the law when they came into the country, but that's not their primary crime. They've done things like committed murder, committed sexual assault, committed armed felonies, and other heinous crimes. And that's who the ICE people were going after in Los Angeles last Friday. So President Trump is trying to win the messaging war. He's trying to win the security war. And then his FBI director, as we reported this morning exclusively, is trying to win the financial war, which is to choke off those groups, foreign or domestic, that are funding, organizing, and directing these protests, choke their money off quickly so that these things can't become a nationwide movement like the Summer of Rage in 2020. All three are lessons learned 4 or 5 years ago, and all are being deployed, I think, pretty carefully right now.
Yeah, and John, I find it kind of ironic that the only person on Capitol Hill that seems Democrat, that is, that wants to call this out is John Fetterman, of all people.
Yeah.
The only one. I mean, it says that, an end to anarchy and chaos. Well, John, you mentioned some of the financial backing behind this. You wanted to report this from Just the News, that the group at the center of initial anti-ICE protests, known as the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, or CHIRLA, was funded by California and the federal government as well. But the federal funding was terminated by the Trump administration. But the state of California provides extensive funding for immigration services. What can you tell us about CHIRLA and these anti-ICE protests?
Now, they are at the center of these protests. They are officially acting as a spokesperson for the protests. You see them quoted in the media. You see them present on the streets. You see them using social media to ask all LA residents to report any sightings of ICE so that the protesters can go swarm those ICE raiders as they're coming in to arrest bad people. So you have a group that's really at the agitation point of these protests, and like so many of the nonprofits that we have seen in the last 10 years, they become integrated with the government, whether at the Biden administration level or at the California level. More than $30 million of chairless funding, which is the vast majority of it, came from the state of California to be involved with illegal immigrants in that state. So we create a taxpayer-funded machinery that allows and aids and comforts and assists these illegal immigrants to spread across the state. Then when the protests start, because you try to arrest the most serious felons in that group, they are out there creating the protests, the blockages of the in the streets and the other thing. These guys, these organizing the protests that resulted in that. So it's a revolving door of money we've seen time and again, whether on the environmental side, the immigration side. And I think you're getting to see a sophistication now in the Trump administration, the Treasury Department, the FBI, the State Department, Homeland Security Department, to start choking off these phones. Stop letting taxpayers fuel their own aggravations.
You know, John, I do want to switch gears here quickly. Just the News always has the latest details on all the biggest topics, including the COVID cover-up. You guys are reporting that the COVID cover-up probes focus on early military intel that the virus was man-made and escaped from a Wuhan lab. What can you tell us about the FBI and intelligence watchdogs who are interviewing whistleblowers after explosive revelations are emerging?
Yeah, listen, this is perhaps one of the greatest secrets that were kept from you and I and all of the official Washington, including President Trump. Just 3 months into the pandemic, the Defense Intelligence Agency and its elite unit of medical scientists who look for terror scares quickly concluded that the coronavirus was man-made. It was lab manufactured, and that it most likely escaped from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Extraordinary genome evidence that they were able to put together. But once they got it, and once they had the evidence so strongly put together, they were told, do not talk to the FBI, do not talk to your other brothers and sisters in the intelligence community. You may not share this. And so for 3.5 and 4 years, when this intelligence could have been useful for responding to the pandemic, they were kept silent. They were kept out of the Biden review that said that this could be a zoological or natural evolution of a virus, when in fact all the evidence pointed otherwise. The FBI now looking at it from a criminal standpoint, the intelligence community's inspector general looking at it from an administrative standpoint, but two sprawling investigations in what could be one of the largest cover-ups of the most deadly pandemic that we've been through in our lifetimes.
On a related story, John, I mentioned in the headlines that a new Chinese researcher has been charged for smuggling a new substance that's related to roundworms. What can you tell us about this?
We have to ask ourselves, why are Chinese researchers playing with viruses and trying to make them more deadly for Americans? Why are they playing with pathogens that could wipe out crops like the fungus that came in last week, or these new spores that were brought in this week? Most of that work is being done at U.S. taxpayer expense. China does not seem to have the best intentions here, and we are allowing it to go out right under our noses. I'm glad that the new FBI and Kash Patel are rounding these people up, but we have to ask ourselves a bigger question. Why are we funding it? Why are we letting these scientists into our country? And why is China taking actions to play with pathogens that could have a significant effect on the future of humanity?
John Solomon, we appreciate you being with us. Thank you so much.
Good to be with you guys.
Thanks, John.
Coming up, Rav brings you to the other side of the southern border in Mexico. A live check-in from a border correspondent there. That is up next. Plus, continuing coverage of the unruly and violent protests in Los Angeles. We're going to bring you live to the City of Angels as Americans watch a Democrat-controlled area turn into a war zone. That is next on American Sunrise when we return right after this.
A beautiful shot there at West Palm Beach. Welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm Bo Davidson. It's so great to have you with us this morning. Let's continue the conversation about President Trump sending another 2,000 National Guard troops, bringing the total up to more than 4,100. Also, the Pentagon sent around 700 Marines to the protest to work with L.A. law enforcement. So let's bring in Dr. Gina and Emily to discuss. Dr. Gina, there was some thought of, is this too much an excessive use, especially with Pete Hegseth sending in the Marines? I don't see it that way because the LAPD's own chief said we are overwhelmed. And when law enforcement says to you, I'm overwhelmed, what do? You have to send in backup. And they blame President Trump. Of course, January 6th, he made all those National Guard available. Nancy Pelosi said no. He does the right thing this time. And all of a sudden, it's excessive? Doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I mean, the left is always going to complain when it doesn't fit their communist agenda. That's what we're really dealing with here. This is actually very simple and easy to see through. Bo, here's the thing. When you have rocks being thrown at cops and whole platforms of rocks and bricks being brought in, along with waters, and how are they freezing the waters? I mean, just ask yourself questions like this. This is not an uprising like you would see in another country where you have, people actually opposing the government and rising up. These are paid communist protesters. Now, are there a couple of free Palestine idealist little college people who don't know any history mixed in the bunch? Of course there are some of those. But I would say probably, if I were guessing, less than 2% of them are actual real protesters who have a passion about something and want to exercise their free speech rights. The rest of them are paid communist, violent Antifa, Black Lives Matter, tired old, same game we saw before. And thank God we have the leadership and a president and Pete Hegseth out there to take control of this situation before it turns into another summer of love, Emily.
Absolutely, Gina. And explain to me how setting a car on fire is going to help explain their stance, help with their protest at all. I mean, it's really just agitators. It's just chaos. It's anarchy. And, you guys, I pulled up President Trump's Truth Social post because he commented on this conversation that we're having. He defended his decision. He's doubling down. He said it was a great decision in sending the National Guard in to deal with the violent, instigated riots in California. And this is the part that I want you guys to listen to. He said, if we had not done so, Los Angeles would have been completely obliterated. If Gavin Newsom wasn't going to step up, if Karen Bass wasn't going to step up, thank God President Trump was going to, and he sent in all of these National Guard troops and these Marines as well. It looks like it's going to be a little bit of time before all of this gets completely under control. But as you guys know, we will be keeping a close eye on Los Angeles throughout the day.
Yeah, and you know what? Part of me, Emily, honestly, when I saw this, because I lived in L.A. before, when you see them burning it down, it's like, if you guys really want this utopia, this socialist communist utopia, burn it down. Just do it. Because I'm sick of seeing this, because you're saying you're blaming President Trump, but it's not his fault. So if you really want to burn it down, if you want anarchy, let California become that. I hate to say that because it's such a great state, but the truth of the matter is that a lot of the businesses that are being affected, and think back to BLM, are Hispanic businesses that are being lit on fire, that are being affected. So they're hurting their own people. This is what is so counterintuitive about this entire situation. We'll keep an eye on this, of course, as it develops. Coming up on American Sunrise, top U.S. and Chinese officials are in London for trade talks. Will a truce come out of this meeting? Find out later on the show. American Sunrise will be back in 2 short minutes. Welcome back to American Sunrise. The bell at the New York Stock Exchange will ring in a few moments, but as we wait, let's take a quick look at the futures. We have the Dow right there, plus 17, S&P plus 9.5, NASDAQ plus 35, gold, silver, and crude oil all in the green. Things looking good this morning for futures. Emily?
All right, Bo, thank you very much. All right, we have been keeping a close eye on the riots in Los Angeles as multiple law enforcement agencies and the National Guard are attempting to quell the violence. The situation quickly turns political after California Governor Gavin Newsom pushed back on the Trump administration's help to get the riots under control. Democrats across the country have been ramping up their rhetoric in opposition of Trump's handling of the riots. Real America's Voice's very own Ben Bergquam is on the ground for us in Los Angeles. Ben, thank you so much for being with us this morning. You know, I've been seeing reports that similar demonstrations have been popping up in a lot of other liberal cities, Democrat-run cities, San Francisco, Dallas, even New York City have been seeing some protests as well. Your reaction to Democrats pushing back on Trump for trying to help out and really stop the violence in Los Angeles?
Well, the Democrats are the reason we're in this situation. They're the ones who invited the invasion into our country. They've invited millions of illegal aliens into our country. And now when President Trump is doing what he said he was going to do, which he got voted in, he got elected to do, which is mass deportations, they're throwing a tantrum. And it's par for the course with the Democrats. It's not surprising. And the fact that they blame President Trump for not policing their cities when they're the same people that defunded the police, they're the same people that took a knee for George Floyd. It's not surprising. These are anti-American, anti-police, anti-law enforcement, anti-rule of law, anti-American sovereignty Democrats. That's what they are. That's what they stand for. And so, you know, the key is in 2026, the choice just becomes more and more and more obvious. Which direction do you want our country to go? Do you want to be in a hellhole like LA, where you have to shut your business because you don't know if you're going to get looted that night because you don't have police to show up unless you're threatened by President Trump? Or do you want to be in a conservative city where you know you've got law enforcement to back you up if you need them?
Right. No, I think it's concerning that this is spreading to other cities, especially with the big military parade happening in D.C. this weekend. Definitely not good to be seeing all of this happening, Ben. But set the scene for us in Los Angeles. What is the latest that you've been hearing? You know, a lot of moving parts. We know that last night there were Marines that came in. National Guard is there. Tell us what is the latest happening right now in Los Angeles?
Well, it's quiet right now. You know, the kids went back to their mom's basements, and everybody's kind of in the mornings are pretty quiet after about 4 a.m. But there were bombs going off last night. They have these mortars that go off. But the big thing is what you just pointed out, Emily. This is leading up to the parade this Saturday in Washington, D.C. and across America. There's this organization called No Kings that's organizing across America, but it's all the same groups. It's Indivisible. It's Act Blue. That's the Democrat Socialists of America. It's Soros, all these groups. And what we're hearing now is the CCP and potentially Iran are involved with it as well. They're organizing thousands of protests across America. And this is just the beginning of what we anticipate for the rest of the summer. As President Trump, Tom Homan, they don't back down on deportations. You're going to see more and more and more of this unrest, violence, especially in liberal cities. So just be aware if you're doing any traveling this summer.
Yeah, well, Ben, we have to give a lot of respect to Tom Homan. He is a true American patriot. Really doing everything that he can to try to still carry out these ICE operations in Los Angeles, despite all of the riots and all of the violence, everything happening there. He has been doubling down and saying that ICE is not backing down, despite everything happening. They are still continuing with their orders, with their operations. We were hearing, him saying Gavin Newsom, a back and forth between them about a potential arrest. President Trump weighing in. What are you hearing about that, Ben?
Well, I know MAGA wants him to be arrested. MAGA wants Karen Bass to be arrested. Anybody who gets in the way of ICE doing their jobs, they want him to be arrested. It all comes down to a political calculation, unfortunately, though. And is this going to help or hurt? Well, I take that back. There's a point of justice in this. There's law and order, but there's a political calculation as well. And so, we'll see. We'll see if it's just rhetoric. We'll see if it actually happens. But I'll tell you what, MAGA wants that to happen. So we'll wait and see. And like you said, God bless Tom Homan. The operations continue. We're hearing that this month, June, will potentially be the biggest one so far. So hopefully that's the case. And they're going to continue to ramp up as 287G. They deputize these sheriffs, and particularly in red states and red cities across America. So that's our hope, is to watch President Trump and Tom Homan do more and more and more, and we'll just see how the left responds.
Yeah, they are certainly not backing down, even if that doesn't mean that Governor Gavin Newsom will end up in handcuffs. Very unlikely that will happen, Ben. But what can we expect to see in Los Angeles today? Are there going to be any more National Guard members coming in, Marines, any additional military? What do you expect is going to be the next moves here?
Yeah, I anticipate the National Guard's already here. The Marines were on their way. Last I heard, about midnight, they were at Seal Beach. I haven't heard if they're actually any closer now, but I'm heading down that way as we speak. So I'll give you the latest as we get down there, and I'll be reporting from here all day. I anticipate there to be more protests actually all week here in L.A. Whether or not they get as violent as they were yesterday or on Sunday, that's yet to be seen. But you can see there, even with the threat that President Trump has made of sending the Marines in, you finally have some action from Karen Bass and Governor Newsom. You've got more law enforcement agencies. But by the way, they're sending hundreds of law enforcement agents up here, officers up here from all different branches across California now, taking away from the law enforcement that's desperately needed in those communities. And the only reason that's happening is because they allow the lawlessness to continue. They could have shut this down on day one, but they don't want to shut it down. They want it to continue. They want the chaos.
That is a really, really good point, Ben. Well, thank you so much for being on the ground, bringing us the latest details, and please stay safe. We will be checking back in with you on Real America's Voice throughout the rest of the day. Let's send it back over to Bo Davidson for the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange, all sponsored by AMAC.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
And we are awaiting the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange. Let's take a look at these futures right now. Pre-market trading, the Dow is plus 25. The S&P is about 9.5 up. NASDAQ is 35 points in the green. Gold plus 6.5. Silver's the only one down, just a little less than a percentage point, and crude oil is up in the green as well. So looking pretty good with the exception of silver. Let's talk also about who is going to be opening the bell today. It's going to be the Fortive Corporation. To honor the occasion today will be their president, their incoming president and CEO, Olamide Soroye, who will be ringing the ceremonial bell. Their ticker marker is FTV. Fortive is an industrial conglomerate company that provides healthcare solutions, intelligent operating solutions, and precision technology. So that's going to be who's going to be ringing the opening bell today. Let's take a look. It should be just about to ring in just a moment. We can still take a look at these futures. Okay, the Dow is down now just a little bit in the red. So the bell is not going to ring right now, so we're just going to go ahead and tell you that still to come on American Sunrise, the mayhem in Los Angeles over federal immigration raids. Just look at the damage to LAPD cruisers, acts of vandalism costing hundreds of thousands of dollars. What needs to happen for the violence to end? We'll discuss. Also, former Vice President Kamala Harris finally says something about the riots in her home state of California. Her statement is ahead. American Sunrise is back in just a minute. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm Dr. Gina. Thanks for joining us this morning. We invite you to hop in our conversation on Getter and Rumble. We're agreeing in the chat right now that it feels like a Monday for a lot of reasons. It is time now to take the political pulse of America and the beat today. A majority of Americans agree with President Trump's deportation plans. According to a new CBS News poll, 54% agree, while 46% disagree. This poll also states 42% of Americans believe Trump's deportation plans have made America safer. That was part of his pledge. While 30% say it has made the country less safe. And those are the people smoking crack. I'm kidding. This deportation poll comes as riots and protests over federal immigration raids in Los Angeles have rocked the city. President Trump is now sending another 2,000 National Guard troops, bringing the total to more than 4,100. Also, Pentagon sent around 700 Marines to the protest to work with the LA law enforcement. President Trump put out this message yesterday. He said, looking really bad in LA, bring in the troops. Also, arrest the people in face masks now. Yes, please. Can we just arrest even the people walking down the street with their face masks, too? Sorry, it's just one of those mornings where it's just coming out of my mouth, whether I meant to say it or not. Joining us now with his take is a man never shy to share his opinion, the host of America's Voice Live, with a mellifluous voice, according to Bo Davidson. Absolutely. Steve Gruber, welcome to the show. Good to have you. This has been an interesting thing to watch. Would you have predicted that Trump would respond this way?
I wouldn't. Look, here's the thing. I'm watching all of this. This is the best advertisement I've ever seen. 54% approved from CBS. Is that what you just said?
Yeah.
From CBS.
Big numbers.
Okay. That's remarkable. Donald Trump getting out there. Look, I'm watching the looting of a Michael Jordan store, the looting of a Skechers store, the looting of liquor stores. I'm watching all of this violence. The Marines are there only to protect federal buildings. The Marines are not there to enforce any law that I understand. They're there just to defend federal buildings that are being attacked and destroyed. I've seen a lot of crazy things. The most ridiculous of which was on ABC News here, where I saw the commentator on ABC News say, they're just people having fun watching cars burn.
Yeah.
Really? Just having fun watching cars burn. This was actually the comment on ABC News. This is the same place where Terry Moran got suspended a couple of days ago for attacking Donald Trump and Stephen Miller on social media. Ridiculous. I think you should gut the entire newsroom at that point and start over. But hey, that's just me. Look, this is a violent protest. People are being hurt. Chunks of concrete, Molotov cocktails, tagging fires, all of it. It is by definition a riot. It's not peaceful people having fun watching cars burn. It's ridiculous. And it's the best advertisement that you could have for one side versus the other. One Democrat has come out and said, this is absolutely wrong. John Fetterman, only guy that I've seen come out yet that said, hey, this is wrong. Democrats need to stand up and talk about this forcefully. Otherwise, we cannot take the moral high ground. He's exactly right. What moral high ground do you have staying on top of Waymo cars that are in flames? Waymo, by the way, pulling out of Los Angeles now saying, yeah, we're done here. Those cars, those Waymo self-driving cars, I don't know if that's one of them. They're worth about $200,000 apiece. At least 5 of them have been burned. That's $1 million in cars burned on Sunday alone.
Wow.
I mean, you can't do business if you lose $1 million a day in your equipment. That's pretty simple, isn't it?
That is pretty simple. I don't know how they didn't pull out of Los Angeles after the first car was lit on fire. I mean, that's unbelievable.
Fair point.
I had to go back and watch that clip of that ABC anchor saying that it's just people having fun watching cars burn, because I'm like, there's no way he actually said that. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, sure did.
And I'll tell you who's not having fun is Los Angeles Police Chief Jim McDonald. He says his department is, quote, overwhelmed. There's no limit to what they're doing to our officers. Listen to this, Steve.
We have adapted our tactics to be able to have a chance to be able to take these people into custody and to be able to hold them accountable. We are overwhelmed as far as the number of people out there engaged in this type of activity and the type of things that they're doing. They'll take backpacks, and the backpack will have a cinder block in it. They have a hammer, and they'll break up the cinder block and use that, pass it around to throw at officers, to throw at cars, and throw at other people.
These Democrat leaders, Gavin Newsom, Karen Bass, crying about Trump manufacturing a crisis. No, he's responding to a need in the city, Steve.
Yeah, and this whole idea that it's unprecedented. Look, I need to remind the viewers about the Little Rock Nine. 1957, not only did Dwight Eisenhower federalize National Guard troops to enact federal policy, he took the sovereignty away from the state of Arkansas. He said, no, you can no longer direct your National Guard, because the governor at the time had directed the National Guard to encircle Little Rock High School and not let in 9 black students. Those are the Little Rock Nine. So Dwight Eisenhower federalized the National Guard. And in 1957, they desegregated the schools in Little Rock, Arkansas, with 9 students. So this idea that somehow this is unprecedented, which is a word that the left uses all the time, is simply not true. This is what's being done because the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, is failing miserably. And so is the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass. They're both failing miserably, the people of their city. When the 101 is blocked and people are just trying to get home, that creates a very dangerous situation. When you see people in their cars getting peppered and attacked because they're not joining in with the protest or some such rot, they just want to go to work or get their kid from daycare or go to the grocery store or whatever, and their cars are being blocked and they're being vandalized and stomped on by these people that apparently have no jobs. And here's the other thing that I find highly irritating. I think most Americans do watching this. They're standing there watching the cars burn, throwing their chunks of concrete while waving the Mexican flags and dumping on America. Well, if Mexico's so damn good, then go there. If you want to celebrate Mexico while dumping on America, go there. Can you imagine what would happen if you went to Mexico with an American flag and burnt the Mexican flag and waved the American flag and told you how great America was? The cartels would roll up on you. Even they wouldn't stand for that. Honestly, it is so outrageous to watch the Mexican flags being waved. Mexico is wonderful. We want more. If Mexico is so great, then why are you here? They're just a hop, skip, and a jump away, kids. Get on your bikes and ride, as Queen would say, right?
Go head on down to Rosarito, have some lobster down there. Well, Steve, I mentioned that your voice is mellifluous, and I want to make sure the viewers understand I'm not making this up. The definition is sweet or musical, pleasant to hear. And that's important because it's a great transition to someone who does not have a mellifluous voice, which is former Vice President Kamala Harris. She finally chimed in about what's happening in Los Angeles. She says the deployment of National Guard troops is, quote, dangerous escalation meant to provoke chaos. And then Trump's former DOGE chief, billionaire Elon Musk, called the situation in L.A. not okay. That's true. It's not okay. Well, 2 differing opinions there, Steve. Kamala Harris seems to be quite burdened by what has been in this particular case. I thought we might get at least a Call Her Daddy podcast episode out of this. But, Steve, your thoughts on the unmellifluous Kamala Harris and Elon's response?
Here's the thing. Elon apparently has decided to get back on his regular meds and off the street drugs. Congratulations. We're all proud of you. It's a good move for Elon. I applaud him. He's off the Special K. He's back on the antidepressants. Probably a good idea for him because he's looking at this. He goes, if Adam Schiff supports something, then clearly I'm on the wrong side of this deal. He was talking about the big, beautiful bill on that. And if Kamala Harris and others are on one side of this and I'm not, well, then I'm on the wrong side of that. Absolutely true, Elon. Welcome back to sanity, at least for a period here. There's not a person in America that can watch what we're seeing right there and say this is okay. There is not a sane, sober, honest person that can watch what you're seeing right there on your screen and say, this is okay, we support this. No, you don't. This is an 80-20 issue. And Kamala Harris trying to run for governor of California or maybe run for president again? Seriously? Based on what? Because you think this is okay? Gavin Newsom running for what? You're going to do for America what you did for California? I think will pass. And this is why, by the way, as a side note, I think there is an opportunity for the right Republican in the state of California coming up next year to run for governor and win that seat because Democrats are advertising this. As you see, LAPD vehicles get destroyed. Democrats are advertising this as okay, mostly peaceful protests. And Democrats think that they are invincible in California. They don't think they can be beaten. How the mighty have fallen. That's when an underdog comes in and wins a ball game. And an underdog could be the right Republican with the right message at the right time to say, look, California, how much of this do you want to take? How much of this do you want to put up with? How much of this do you want to stomach before you say enough is enough and we're moving on?
Steve, is it Steve Hilton? Is it Steve Hilton? Could he do it?
I think it's Grant Cardone. I think he could do it. He could self-fund. He's a former Malibu resident. And by the way, if you haven't heard, the insurance companies are telling the folks in Malibu and elsewhere that the government of California is going to exercise eminent domain and take the entire Malibu Beach, 21 miles in all, and not allow anybody to rebuild. It's going to happen in Pacific Palisades and Malibu and the other communities that burned there.
That's really happening?
There's a lot of things going on there.
That's a done deal?
Yeah, that's really happening. It hasn't happened yet. That's what the insurance companies are telling the people that have had their houses burned, that they're hearing from the state of California rumblings in the back room that they're going to use eminent domain. Has it happened yet? No, but you heard it here first. And so when it comes true, Gina, you can say, by God, Gruber was right. Again.
Yeah. Wow. Unbelievable. And it's interesting to speculate on this gubernatorial race coming up in California. Steve, do you think it takes someone who can independently self-fund, like you mentioned, Grant Cardone? And who else is involved? Who else is going to be in that pool of contenders?
Oh, maybe Steve Hilton, somebody that can self-fund. Here's the thing. Grant lives in your neighborhood currently, Gina. He's in Miami. He's not in California. He fled California because of all the things that we've talked about. He still has a house there in Malibu, but he would have to move back.
Right there, and part of his home was burned. That's why I was asking. That was interesting.
Right. The side of his house, his was the last house standing on Malibu. Right. Side of the house is singed, but it did not burn. It just goes to show you, if you use the right building materials, you might be in better shape. The problem with a lot of those areas that burned in California, they were older houses, they were timber framed, and when they caught, they went and they took the next one and the next one and the next one with them. And look, a lot of those houses, well, this is why eminent domain comes into play. Those houses were woefully underinsured. You cannot rebuild for the amount of insurance money that each of these homeowners is going to get. This is a terrible situation for the homeowners there because many of them were elderly. They lived there for generations. Some are multi-generational homes. They're never getting rebuilt. They're getting reclaimed by the state of California, where they'll build high rises. They'll put condos and apartment buildings there. Why? Because that way they can maximize it. They don't let anybody build on the beach.
Yep.
They take eminent domain there. Then they change the building permits and say you can only build up. You can't build single family homes because that's a waste of our good real estate. And we want, 25 floors, 8 units apiece, times X per unit, times X for property tax, times X for the state of California, because we need more tax dollars. That's how that works. Pretty simple, right?
Yeah. Steve, before we let you go here, we want to switch gears to the ongoing U.S. and China trade war. Top U.S. and Chinese officials are in London to try to make some headway in the two world powers trade dispute. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and other Trump administration members are speaking with Chinese vice president. No word on how long negotiations are going to last, but Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping agreed to this trade talk meeting last week. So do you believe that anything is going to come of this? Only about a minute left with you.
Well, President Xi is in real trouble. About a year ago, he started losing power. This is all coming to light now. The generals and the military around him began to, slide their allegiances a bit. Xi Jinping spent all this time eliminating all the competition. There's some rumor that he may have had a stroke about a year ago. I don't know if that's true, but I know that he began to lose his iron grip on power, even though he eliminated the competition. And one of the big driving factors, if not number one, is the economy. Chinese factories are not running at full capacity, or not even close. China says that their GDP was up 5.5%. Nobody believes that. Nobody believes the numbers coming out of China. They have real problems with the masses because employment is down. Factories are not going full speed. People need more money. Financial pressures could bring Xi to his knees. So therefore, there could be some room for optimism in London because Xi needs an economic deal with the United States to remain in power. That's my takeaway.
Interesting. All right. Well, Steve Gruber, as always, interesting when you join us. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, guys.
Coming up, a discussion on dollars and common sense. How can you stay ahead of the curve in these financially turbulent times? We'll discuss that next. But first, a live house auction in Arkansas didn't expect a chaotic cow to be the spotlight of their day. These details later in the show. We're back with more American Sunrise right after this. Don't go away.
Let's spill some tea.
Okay, welcome back. I'm American Sunrise contributor Emily Finn. It is time now to spill some tea, sponsored by Artillery Tea Company. Make sure you're going to artilleryteaco.com and use the promo code America's Tea for 25% off your first order. Artillery Tea is all natural, whole leaf. The tea bags are chemical free, and each tea bag can be used twice. Artillery Tea Company is family and veteran owned and operated, and a portion of your purchase goes to help veteran and first responder charities. Make sure to go to artilleryteaco.com and use the promo code America's Tea for 25% off your first order. Time now to spill some tea, and in the cup today, a Rev programming note for tonight. Stay tuned tonight at 7 p.m. for the Birch Gold special on the Rio Reset. It's an in-depth preview of the BRICS 2025 summit that's happening next month in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. This year's summit could be a game changer that might potentially redraw the global economic map and trigger the fall of Western-led institutions like the IMF, World Bank, and the U.S. dollar itself. It is indeed the Rio Reset. Here's a preview of what you can expect to see.
The world is changing faster than anyone imagined. BRICS nations are plotting a new financial order.
BRICS is holding their 2025 summit July 6th and 7th in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. This year's summit could be a game changer that might potentially redraw the global economic map and trigger the fall of Western-led institutions like the IMF, World Bank, and the U.S. dollar itself.
This group of countries has become now the only legitimate geopolitical economic rival to the West.
Kills everything the dollar represents.
America's debt is quickly approaching $40 trillion.
The bigger our budget deficits, the larger our debt will be, and ultimately the less attractive the dollar will be to foreign investors.
And now the threat is greater than ever. China is aggressively working to dethrone the U.S. dollar. They're striking deals in their own currency, building alliances with Russia and others.
The dollar's position as global reserve currency is under threat.
And quickly undermining the system that keeps the dollar strong.
It's crazy because the dollar has had a weaker and weaker demise.
If the dollar loses its global status, your retirement accounts, your savings, and the value of your paycheck could vanish overnight. The cost of living would skyrocket. Loans would dry up. The economy would crash.
The country will go bankrupt. We need to do what central banks around the world are doing, and that is hedging our retirements and making sure that we have some gold in there.
Rev's own Eric Bolling hosted the special and had this to say about the summit and what it could mean for the world. Take a listen here.
What's going on in Rio de Janeiro in July is that the BRICS country, Brazil, Russia, India, China, with Iran, and there are about another 100 countries that want to get involved in this. They're meeting to figure out a way to move the global currency away from the U.S. dollar into something else. And that's been discussed since I've been, alive, how to do this. This is the first time it might actually come close to happening. I hope it doesn't happen, but here's the reason why it's relevant. Anywhere in the world, if you purchase a barrel of oil or an ounce of gold, or you make a international transaction back and forth, these transactions are all traded in U.S. dollars. So it doesn't matter if you're in Taiwan, if you're in Brazil, or you're in the United States. If you're doing an international transaction, whoever the country is that's not in the United States has to purchase U.S. dollars. That's a buy price. That's a loft to the U.S. dollar, and then negotiate the trade, and then you hold these dollars.
All right. Yes, very much looking forward to that special coming up on RAV. You know, Bo, I saw Philip Patrick is going to be featured, and I know we've interviewed him many times together. He is the best, smartest person to break down really complex topics like this. And so I encourage all of our viewers to tune in. I'm sure that you will learn a whole lot about what's going on.
Yeah, and something Philip said there is important. It's important to have a strong dollar, which means you have to bring your deficits down so your debt isn't out of control, so your dollar actually has value in something. And that's why I think, Gina, the big beautiful bill is important, because you have to bring in tariff revenue, you have to bring in trade revenue, you have to bring in all these revenues that are created by making the Trump tax cuts permanent, which I think will then boost the value of our dollar and hopefully not deflate it.
Right. Again, it's so important to point out, and I really hope that this point can be made clear to the American public, that the Congressional Budget Office and their numbers are complete lies. They base every single dollar that they say you take away from taxes, every single tax cut, they add to deficit. Well, the thing is, it doesn't work that way, because when you make a tax cut, money goes into the economy, right? More people invest, more people spend money, right? And so the Laffer curve is the curve that needs to be used by the Congressional Budget Office. I'm hoping for some reforms along those lines, Bo, because I'm tired of the lies out of the Congressional Budget Office.
Amen to that.
And they were wrong in 2017. Let's not forget that.
Yeah, there's still a whole lot more to come on American Sunrise, so make sure you're staying tuned. A chaotic cow refuses to be sold at a livestock auction in Arkansas. Take a look at your screen. How often do you see something like that? It's video that you do not want to miss. The entire clip is next here on American Sunrise. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm Dr. G. Thanks so much for joining us today. It's time now for the sunny side up, and in the pan today, an utter disaster. A chaotic cow scene unfolding at an Arkansas livestock auction last week. Watch as the cow tries to leave and scales those bleachers like a pro, tearing down ceiling tiles, creating a mess. Auctioneers ran down to the lower level of the auction house to get away from her. Just a sweet cow. Farmers were able to capture it, lead it out of the building. Thankfully, cow not injured. Neither were any humans. You guys, I love cows. I'm a big fan. I always wanted a pet cow. Can't have one where I live, but one day I would like to have a pet cow.
I think I keep saying this to you, Gina. The zoo is going to expand. You're going to have all kinds of animals one day.
Yeah, exactly.
I just think it's a very moving story.
Oh,
that's the best I can do.
Oh, boy.
But I do love Arkansas. Arkansas is a great state. I'm glad this cow found hopefully a safe home. But Arkansas is the natural state. I've been fishing fishing there before, and it really is a beautiful state.
I love how the cow's like looking around like, what are you guys all upset about? What is something happening? Do I need to be concerned? I feel like that's the look on his face, like or her face. Anyway, you guys, we'll bring you a sunny side. We try to bring it every day because we like to bring good news, not just all the stressful news, all the bad news. We want to be the show that brings you the good news too. So that's why we do the sunny side up at the end of every show. And great show today, by the way. Terrance and David will both be back next week, I believe, if I have their schedules right. We appreciate you joining us. You make the show. We have so much more for you every single morning. We all start at 8 a.m. Jake Novak, don't forget, with the early show starting at 7 a.m. War Room is up next. Hug your children, love your God. You go boldly now. Live the truth. Make it a great day, you guys.
PD, our local PD, to protect our own National Guard because they're being used upon. Show some decency, show some humanity. More importantly, act like the commander-in-chief. This chaos is manufactured, and it's my job as governor, working with local law enforcement, to clean up their mess.
I can't emphasize enough the level of fear and terror that is in Angelino's right now. He talked about violent criminals. Drug dealer. You go from a drug dealer to chasing people through the parking lot of a Home Depot where there's day laborers working. This entire situation is what leaves us believing that we're being used as a test case.